Imagine an ordinary high school student, Shinju Kai, who hides a dark secret as a hired killer. Together with the class is transported to the world of sword and magic, where the fate of heroes awaits them. Having received the unique blessing, appreciation, he becomes an outcast among his classmates, but his cold-bloodedness and killer skills are ready to turn the rules of the game upside down. Will he be able to lead the world from the shadows to victory over the Demon King? Or will his dark side become a threat to everyone? Shinju Kai, a high school student with a dark aura, entered the classroom after a night of work as an assassin. Student number 35, Mido Shuji, the star of the soccer club and class president, greeted him, but without much enthusiasm. Student number 22, Nagasho Reina, the unofficial leader of the girls in the class, asked Mido with irritation why he was bothering with this intolerable Shinju. Mido reminded that their classmate, although he sleeps during lessons, does not show tact. At that moment, student number 1, Arashi Shunsuke, the terror of the school and the leader of the bullies, entered the classroom. His classmates, afraid of him, lined up to greet him. Noticing Shinjo sleeping, Arashi nudged him and, receiving no response, shouted, threatening to kill him if he continued to ignore him. Shinjo stood up abruptly, coldly declaring that he wanted to sleep and asking not to be disturbed. In a rage, he squeezed his hand with such force that even his hooligan friends were frightened. Student number 8, Kanzaki Rin, the main beauty of the class, talented in literature and martial arts, removed from everyone, asked to be quiet. Arashi snapped back. But then student number 29, Hashimoto Mirei, a strict and orderly member of the discipline committee, intervened. She ordered him to stop since Shinjo had done nothing wrong. Student number 23, Narumi Ryoya, a frivolous guy, suggested that the girls stop arguing, assuring them that they would be ignored anyway. The lesson began and everyone sat down. In Kagura High School, Class 1-2, conflicts like this were routine. Shinjo continued to sleep, but suddenly felt a strange feeling. He noticed a blue glow under Mido's feet. The students, also noticing the mark, panicked, not understanding what it was. Having decided to evacuate, they did not have time. The glow flared up, and the whole class found itself in an unfamiliar stone room with massive columns. Shinjo, analyzing calmly, realized that they had been swallowed up by the white light and transported to another place. Nobody knew where they were or why. Mido Shuji called for everyone to calm down while checking to see if anyone was hurt. Arashi took the lead and ordered them to follow him, but Shinjo stopped him when he heard footsteps outside the door. The doors swung open, revealing a girl and a man in white robes, reminiscent of knights and princesses of the Middle Ages. Shinjo, hiding behind a pillar, assessed them. The man, well-built, with a sword, radiated danger. The girl had probably undergone training, but nothing outstanding. The girl, who identified herself as Leonora, the Archbishop of the Holy Country of Digrest, praised Shinju's composure, calling him a worthy candidate for a hero. Arashi, not believing it, rudely asked what kind of nonsense she was talking about, and stated that he had not heard of Digrest. Mido apologized for his classmate, explaining that they were confused, and asked him to explain what was going on. Leonora revealed that they were summoned to another world as humanity's hope to defeat the Demon King. They are candidates for heroes. The students found it hard to believe. Arasi, continuing to be rude, called her words nonsense. Guy, defending the saint, offered to teach the hooligan a lesson so that he would know his place. Leonora tried to stop the knight, but he refused, believing that it was better to show strength right away. Arashi, without retreating, rushed into battle, confident that he could dodge the first blow and counterattack with his bare hands. However, Guy swung his sword with lightning speed, delivering a precise blow to the forehead of the bully, who did not even notice the movement. The knight asked if he would continue after being wounded. Leonora intervened and ordered the sword to be put away, apologizing for the incident. She assured that their group meant no harm and promised to explain everything in detail, asking for silence. Leonora stood in front of the class and revealed that their world was being invaded by the Demon King, and humanity was on the brink of extinction. The sacred country of Digrest desperately resists, but lacks the strength. Shinju Kai, thinking about the Demon King, thought that this was a typical story. Leonora called them the candidate heroes, the last hope of humanity, begging them to defeat the enemy. The classmates, in a panic, considered the task impossible. They are not warriors, and not everyone is able to withstand such pressure. Many cried, asking to be returned home. Night Guy coldly replied that there was no other way. To return, he had to defeat the Demon King. Shinjo, not knowing whether this was true or not, suspected that Guy was preparing them for the worst. He thought, carefree schoolchildren will not become killers without experience and talent. Arashi Shunsuke, the class bully, was indignant that they were called to save the locals while ignoring them. He asked boldly if they thought the students would obey blindly. Gaius, noticing his fighting spirit, recognized him as a potential fighter, but wondered whether to eliminate him immediately as a future threat, reaching for his sword. Leonora interrupted, healing the wound on Arashi's forehead with magic and apologizing for the inconvenience. She explained that her power was a gift from the god Digrest, familiar to them as magic, and hinted that their culture was known to the locals. Shinjo suspected that their summoning was not the first, and this power was the reason for their appearance here. A light flashed in Mido Shuji's hands and turned into a sword. Leonora explained that it was a miraculous power that awakened blessings in candidates that granted random skills. She could not change them. Admitting her request was selfish, she begged them to lend them strength, noting that their number did not affect their ability to fight. Mido, supporting her, added that training was necessary. Leonora assured that Digrest would provide them with everything they needed. Mido, taking the role of leader, urged his classmates to agree for the sake of survival, as blessings can save the defense in an emergency. The disciples reluctantly complied. Leonora, overjoyed, began to bestow blessings. Hashimoto Mirei received telekinesis. Arashi, explosive power. Shinjo, noticing that he had been passed over, raised his hand. Leonora, apologizing, touched his shoulder with her glowing hand. The guy shuddered, feeling a sharp change in vision. Information about Leonora appeared before his eyes. Her name, status, abilities. The princess explained that his blessing was appraisal, a rare skill that allowed him to see details about any target. Shinjo's eyes glowed red, and he checked himself. All the information was displayed in the window in front of him. Meanwhile, classmates tested their strength. Arashi ran up and mockingly asked about his skill, making fun of the red eyes. Nagasho Rina chuckled wryly, noting that the arrogant Shinjo was pleased to be disappointed. The hero, surprised by their self-confidence, mentally analyzed. Their blessings may be useful, but no one knows how reliable they are and whether they will be taken away. As a hired killer, he knew that it was possible to kill without magic, and decided that he would act from the shadows, using assessment and his cold-blooded calculation. Leonora, having completed the ceremony, announced that everyone had received blessings. She understood that it was difficult to control them for now, but one day these gifts would become fangs that pierce the Demon King. Noticing the students' fatigue, she suggested that they rest. Each candidate for hero was taken to a separate room in the castle. Shinjo Kai, lying in his room, thought, before going to bed, it would be worth collecting more information. Outside the window, he heard the footsteps of the patrolling knights, grumbling that they had been sent on night watch on the day of the hero's call. They discussed the new arrivals, considering them to be children who were incapable of even holding a sword, and doubted that they would be able to defeat the Demon King. One knight suggested that the saint had a plan, but the other dismissed it, not believing it would succeed. Shinjo, hiding behind a tree, watched the patrol. It was the third round, and he realized that security had been tightened. After analyzing one night with the help of assessment, he learned that he only knew fencing. He didn't have the miraculous power that Leonora had, which meant that not everyone in Digrest had it. Shinjo mentally calculated the geography. The castle was surrounded by a fortress city. He was interested in what things were like inside and how difficult it would be to get in there unnoticed. Deciding not to rush, he continued his observation, but soon finished for the day, returning to the room. Meanwhile, two students, Nagasho Rena and Hashimoto Mirei, went outside, finding a secluded place to practice blessings. Miley was afraid to take risks, fearing the wrath of the guards, but Rena assured that they were just practicing. They began to try their hand. Shinjo, noticing them, watched from afar. The blessings made him uneasy. Their power and unpredictability made him wary. He decided to follow the girls, but suddenly felt something strange and turned around. The girls also heard a rustling sound in the bushes. A creature that looked like a lizard, but was the size of a large dog, jumped out of the grass. Shinjo used assess. It was a Val lizard, an aggressive monster. The lizard inhaled sharply and let out a deafening cry. The girls, in panic, started to run, and the monster chased after them. Shinjo analyzed. The lizard moved quickly, but linearly, not distinguished by intelligence. The creature was large, but vulnerable to a precise strike. Pulling out a knife, he threw it at the monster, piercing its scales. The wound, although shallow, distracted the lizard, giving the girls a chance to escape. However, the lizard quickly recovered and approached the fallen Rena, who, paralyzed with fear, covered her head with her hands and screamed. At that moment, Shinjo's second knife plunged into the monster's head, and it fell dead. Rena, not understanding what had happened, assumed that she had been rescued. The girls hurried to leave, fearing another encounter with such a creature. Shinjo, after making sure they were safe, pulled the knife out of the lizard. He had no particular reason to kill the monster, but he couldn't leave it alive, otherwise he wouldn't have fallen asleep. He thought, if such creatures roamed everywhere, walking in this world would be dangerous. Suddenly he heard another rustling sound. Deciding not to take any chances, Shinjo left, not wanting to face another enemy. At that moment, a man in a black cloak approached the lizard's corpse. After surveying the place, he muttered that the hero candidates were small fry, and he was disappointed. However, after sniffing, he noticed one with a similar smell, which aroused his interest. The next morning, Night Guy showed his classmates the corpse of the Val lizard, found near the walls of the capital. The students looked at the monster in horror. Guy explained that he was a minion of the Demon King who loved human flesh, and now the hero candidates were their main target. Researcher Steady, analyzing the carcass, noticed traces of witchcraft, the work of a demon of mid-level or higher. He assumed that rumors about the summoned heroes had reached the enemy, and he had sent reconnaissance. Shinjo Kai thought, witchcraft, other than miraculous power, is something new. The classmates panicked, wondering if the monster was controlled by a demon. Steady explained that the demons use Arabic witchcraft to control the monsters, animals and plants mutated by mana. Their power depends on the sphere of the mouth and mana, the source of which is evil, that is, the Demon King himself and his minions. Shinjo, observing Steady, decided that he would be useful for gathering information. However, he was worried that the lizard was being controlled. Recalling the evaluation data, he noted the monster's subordinate status, confirming the demon's presence. Shinjo realized that he had barely noticed him, and he might still be around. Suddenly, an ominous voice sounded in his head, asking if he really looked that much like her. He would die soon, and he shouldn't be afraid. Arashi, interrupting the hero's thoughts, declared that they must defeat the Demon King in order to return home, and did not intend to delay. Shinjo chuckled to himself. His classmates had grown bolder, seeing this world as a game, But war was still war. They would have to kill, and it was better to realize it sooner. Leonora intervened and urged them not to rush. She reminded them that the students had not yet mastered their powers and needed training. As hero candidates, they are developing faster than the locals, but are not ready yet. A week of training has passed. Shinju thought that it was strange that there was no language barrier, and his appraisal was useless in combat, which is why he was banned from sparring. But they gave me access to the library. Leonora noted that knowledge was also power, but the books mostly described the history of Digrest, and there was almost no information about demons. After finishing reading, Shinjo went to the training yard where his classmates were fighting. He noted, "The saint was not lying. Their progress is stunning." 5 stood out: Narumi Ryoya, Arashi Shunsuke, Kanzaki Rin, Hashimoto Mirei, and Nagasho Reina. But Mido Shuji surpassed everyone, defeating the knight in sparring. He, surrendering, admitted that Mido was already stronger than him. Mido thanked him for the instructions, attributing the success to the blessing. Shinju used evaluation to find out that Mido's stats were DF a week ago, but now they are BA. Such a leap is incredible even for a genius. Blessings not only give abilities but also strengthen the body. While he was thinking, his classmates approached him, mocking him. Does he really not know how to fight and just stands on the sidelines? Their arrogance grew with strength, and the pressure on Shinjo increased. The argument was getting heated, but Leonora intervened, thanking everyone for progress that exceeded expectations. She announced that the schedule would be accelerated. Narumi, worried, asked if they would be sent after the Demon King right now. Leonora reassured them. Not yet, but it was time for them to fight a real monster in a real battle. Night Guy announced that today the hero candidates would have practice in the forest. It is impossible to move in a large group. It will interfere, so they will split into teams of 2 or 3 people. Classmates immediately began to form groups, but Shinjo Kai and one girl were left without a partner. The girl, upset that no one invited her, decided to team up with Shinjo. This was Kanzaki Rin, self-confident, cool-headed, and proud, who would not tolerate obstacles. Noticing his gaze, she sharply asked why he was looking like that. Leonora explained that the team that defeated the most monsters would receive a special reward, wished them good luck, and started the test. Kanzaki Rin, walking through the forest, told her partner that her blessing surpassed the abilities of her classmates, so Shinju could do nothing as long as he didn't get in the way. He agreed indifferently, relying on her. Shinju, using assessment, decided to study her combat potential. Soon he noticed 4 signals around. They were surrounded by small orc monsters. Kanzaki Rin easily fought back using her blessing Control to make others obey her commands. She ordered the orcs to drop their weapons and put their hands behind their backs. Shinju warned that the monsters were still nearby, and Rin prepared herself. But after a few minutes of fighting, she looked exhausted. She explained that using the blessing for a long time would drain her mana. Shinjo, surprised by the high energy consumption, advised to quickly kill the orcs before others arrived. Rin hesitated, thinking that the orcs were too similar to humans. Shinjo objected. The monster attacked, which means it deserves to die, because they are enemies, and there is no point in sparing them. Rin agreed and admitted that he was right. When the new orcs attacked, she ordered them to fall to the ground. Shinjo asked what next. Rin, having made up her mind, ordered the monsters to wring their necks, and they complied. Shinjo, impressed, noted that her control was capable of such a thing. Rin explained, the stronger the opponent, the lower the chance of success. She admitted that real combat and dead bodies were not what she imagined, but enemies, monsters or people, needed to be killed in order to survive. Surprised by Shinjo's calmness, she asked how he remained unperturbed without a fighting force. He replied that this was his strong point and asked what she planned next. If he is afraid, they may come back. Rin, stubbornly declaring that she would continue, noted her stable psyche. Shinjo thought she was workable, but he wondered how others were coping. Meanwhile, one of the groups, running away from a huge bear-like monster, tried to resist. Using the blessing, they threw the stone, causing damage, but were unable to destroy the creature. In a panic, they did not know how to overcome a monster that was larger than them. Kanzaki Rin, breathing heavily, told Shinju Kai that she had been raised by her grandfather since childhood, and she dreamed of returning to her world to repay him for his care. His grief over her disappearance tormented her heart. Shinjo, walking alongside her, asked if she was sure it was a good idea to go straight ahead, since it was easy to get lost in the forest. Rin, after thinking, countered that as long as they were going straight, everything was fine. Shinju noted skeptically that she clearly had never been to the forest. Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by a scream similar to Hashimoto Mirei's voice. Shinjo realized that the girl was in trouble. Rin, without thinking, decided to go to help, hoping that Mirei was not hurt. Shinjo chuckled and called her surprisingly kind. Rin, slightly embarrassed, asked what he really thought of her, but immediately waved him off, stating that it was time to go. Hashimoto, bleeding from a severe wound, screamed at her partner, Narumi Ryoya, to run and leave her. Narumi refused, but the monster, which looked like a huge mutant bear, approached. At that moment, Kanzaki Rin appeared and, using her blessing Control, ordered the monster to stop. Narumi, delighted, called her a savior, but Rin, tense, warned that she would not be able to hold off the monster for long. Shinju, upon analyzing, realized that her skill affected opponents differently. He asked Narumi if Hashimoto was alive. He confirmed that she was breathing, but her wounds were serious. Shinju ordered them to grab her and run, adding that Narumi should find Mido Shuji, or Leonora. Narumi, apologizing and calling himself their debtor, put Hashimoto on his shoulders and ran away. Shinjo, using appraisal on the monster, saw its frightening characteristics. High defense thanks to its strong fur that even he couldn't penetrate, and a mutant class. Kanzaki Rin, screaming that she couldn't hold the monster back any longer, released control, and it moved towards them. Shinjo, realizing that they had gained time, suggested running. But Rin, suddenly falling, apologized. Her legs gave out from overexertion. Shinjo, realizing that the situation was critical, picked her up in his arms and hid behind a tree, ordering her to remain silent so that the monster would not notice them. Rin, noticing a strange object in the distance, asked what it was. Shinju lied, calling it a smoke bomb made out of boredom during training to distract the monster. In fact, he always carried a mercenary's arsenal with him: a smoke bomb, throwing knives, a regular knife, and a pistol. Supplies were limited, and he did not want to waste them. Rin, feeling guilty, apologized for promising to help, but in the end, she was saved. Shinjo waved it off, saying that an apology was unnecessary, and suggested that they thank him if they really wanted to. Rin said quietly, "Thank you very much." Shinju chuckled and remarked that if she were always so polite, crowds would flock to her. He reminded her to keep her voice down. Rin asked what to do next, suggesting that they run, but Shinju said there was no need. At that moment, Mido Shuji and his team appeared in front of the monster. In a rage, he asked if this was the beast that had injured Narumi and Hashimoto, and declared himself its main opponent. Activating the sword that protects against evil, Mido boldly stepped towards the monster. Mido Shuji swung his sword and attacked the armored bear, but its tough hide withstood the blow. Nagasho Reina, who wielded fire magic, shouted at Mido to move away and unleashed flames on the monster. The bear, engulfed in flames, roared in pain and slowed down. Rina, momentarily horrified that he was not dead, urged the team to remain calm. Her attack worked, and with the three of them working together, they could defeat the beast without rushing. Mido praised Rina, and the team, inspired, continued to strike. Hiding in the shadows, the demon Delphis watched the battle. He noted that the armored bear would not defeat these heroes. Their speed of development and composure, especially Mido, were impressive. Delphis, who had originally planned only reconnaissance, decided to change plans and eliminate Mido right now to teach him a lesson. In this world, you can't relax after a victory. After waiting for the right moment, he prepared to jump out, but suddenly felt the cold of steel at his throat. Shinjo Kai, sneaking up unnoticed, put a knife to his nose and told him to never let his guard down before killing. Delphis raised his hands in shock, not believing that he had been caught off guard. He frantically looked for a way to escape, but Shinjo kicked him in the legs and knocked him down. The demon began to scream, but the hero ordered him to be silent. The noise could attract Mido and his team. Shinjo offered a deal: answers to questions in exchange for freedom. Delphis, indignant, asked who he was to demand answers. Shinjo, radiating a creepy killer aura, replied that he was a shadow from another world. The demon, having sensed his dark essence, realized who he was dealing with. Shinjo admitted that he had noticed the surveillance long ago, but it was difficult to track down the demon, so he used Mido as bait. Delphis, shocked, did not expect that he was exposed from the very beginning. Shinjo explained that as an alien from another world, he knew little about demons and their structure. He demanded that Delphis tell him everything, promising to let him go. The demon, at first refusing, changed his mind, feeling the pain from the knife. But suddenly, poison gushed from his mouth, a means of suicide. He began to die, gritting his teeth and cursing Shinjo for underestimating him. The hero, realizing that the Demon King's army was preparing carefully, realized that serious problems awaited them. A ratings window popped up in front of him, displaying information about the demon. At that moment, Kanzaki Rin ran up, looking at the dead Delphis in horror. She asked her partner if the demon was dead, not believing her eyes. Shinjo Kai looked at Kanzaki Rin and asked how much she saw. The girl replied that it was a little while, just the moment when the demon fell. Shinjo explained that it was the assassin from the Demon King's army who controlled the armored bear and lizard that attacked Nagasho Reina and her friend. Rin, shocked, asked if this meant the demon was trying to kill them. Shinjo confirmed that the Demon King's army was clearly targeting the hero candidates. Rin, admitting her naivety, asked how he had noticed the demon, if he had known about it. Shinjo, deciding not to hide it, said that in their world he worked as a hired killer, which is why he felt a colleague. Rin, horrified, couldn't comprehend his words. Shinjo added that whether to believe him or not was her choice, but the demon's corpse was a fact. He asked not to tell anyone about what happened, since the class was already on edge due to Hashimoto's injury. Rin promised to keep quiet, calling him unexpectedly kind for caring about his classmates' feelings. Shinjo replied that, unlike him, they were not used to fighting, and her control might come in handy in the future. Meanwhile, student number 34, Honda Shiori, used the blessing of healing on Hashimoto. A golden glow enveloped the wounds, and Shiori assured her that the girl would be fully recovered within an hour. Narumi exhaled and asked if she was okay, and thanked Mido Shuji for defeating the monster. Mido confirmed that the beast was strong, but together they could defeat anyone. Leonora and Guy came to visit the group, noticing that everyone had returned. Outraged, their classmates began asking where they had been and why they had not been protected. Guy coldly replied that they were nearby, keeping an eye on them. Narumi, in anger, asked why they hadn't helped then. Guy objected. What kind of training is this if they are constantly being saved? Mido, supporting Narumi, pointed out that Hashimoto almost died. Guy countered that in real combat, death was a common occurrence, and that was the only battles they would face in the future, so there was no point in whining. Mido accused Guy of lying. Hadn't they been the ones who claimed that there were only weak monsters in the forest? Leonora intervened, suggesting that the armored bear was the work of a demon killer who should not have been in this forest. She added that the enemy was probably assessing their strength. Guy agreed, believing that the demon was still lurking in the forest. Leonora ordered to strengthen security and training, otherwise they would be killed. The classmates, frightened, protested. How much more difficult could it be if they were already at their limit? Mido, trying to calm him down, called it ridiculous. It was their first fight, and everyone was worried. Leonora answered firmly, absurd or not, they would have to go through this. Otherwise, they would die. Arasi, unable to bear it, declared that they had been called, and now they were being commanded, and he did not intend to obey. Guy, furious, shouted that they were pawns of Lady Leonora and had no right to disobey. The classmates froze. Arashi, with his eyes burning with passion, decided that he would kill Guy. Mido, standing in his way, forbade him to do this, calling on him to calm down. Confrontation would make them enemies of the entire country. Guy chuckled and said that Mido understood their position. They were valuable pawns, and as long as they obeyed, no one would get hurt. Arashi, calling it a perfect idea, pounced on Guy with a fiery flame, activating the explosion skill, confident that he would finish off the night in one blow. But Guy, having escaped from the flames, directed powerful energy at him. Arashi flew back, falling to the ground. Guy, in explaining, showed their true strength. He announced that training would become more severe from tomorrow and ordered everyone to get ready. Arashi's classmates rushed to him, asking if he was okay. He, looking angrily at Guy, swore to finish off the bastard. The next day after practice, Steady, on Leonora's instructions, announced that he would be leading the training. Mentioning yesterday's injuries, he asked if everyone had recovered. Kanzaki Rin raised her hand, reporting that her wounds had healed thanks to the healing, and she was in perfect condition. Steady explained that the training would take place at his research facility, where they would fight monsters. Mido Shuji asked if this meant that the center was overrun with creatures. Steady replied that it was easier to see once, and led them inside. The students saw goblins, wraith lizards, and huge ogres in cages. Some of the monsters growled as they lunged at the bars. Steady explained that this is his collection for experiments, and the center serves as a training ground for soldiers. Leonora added that battles allow you to collect data on monsters. This is how combat practice began. Shinjo Kai, watching his classmates, was surprised at their calmness for those who were thrown onto the battlefield without consent. Yesterday's experience had clearly affected them, but fear still paralyzed their movements. One monster threw the girl several meters away. She stood up, but Mido Shuji, noticing the danger, demanded that the fight be stopped. Steady refused, saying that Leonora had told him to be stricter. He emphasized that candidates with divine blessings could not lose to weak monsters. The girl, enraged, concentrated the fiery power in her hand and brought it down on the monster, shouting that fear and hesitation were their main enemies. They were capable of this from the very beginning. Mido wondered, was Steady right, and the problem was just fear? He remembered that as the level of blessing increased, a new one could be obtained. Shinju approached Mido and reported that his appraisal had detected the second blessing, Deadly Attack on Monster, Level 1. Mido, inspired, asked Steady if he could come out onto the field. He gave his permission, noting that this is what practice is for. Mido activated the sword that protects against evil and deadly attack, igniting the blade with blue flames. The ogre, frightened, backed away. Mido, apologizing, declared that there would be no mercy and rushed forward. The monster, paralyzed with fear, did not resist. Mido cut off his arm and then his head, killing him easily. Shinju, analyzing, realized that with such strength, even an armored bear would not be a problem. If his evaluation also increases, he may receive a new blessing. Noticing that Arashi's blessing level had also increased, he decided not to tell him, thinking that standard training wouldn't work here. He needs other methods. Meanwhile, Arashi's classmates gathered around him, listening to his plan. He stated seriously that they would kill Guy, capture Leonora, and force her to reveal a way to return home. If the saint is killed, they will not be summoned again. Classmates, tired of the world, supported the idea. Arashi turned to Narumi, calling on him to join in as he was also fed up. Narumi asked about the chances of success. Arashi replied that with him, they would increase dramatically. Narumi, doubting, did not want to kill, but, remembering his comrades and their suffering, agreed to the adventure. The next day, classmates continued their grueling training in the yard. Shinjo Kai, observing their zeal, turned his attention to Mido Shuji, who, despite his success, considered himself weak and was looking for ways to become stronger. Shinjo approached and asked if it wasn't enough that he had already surpassed half of the Digress Knights. Mido frowned and replied that he couldn't defeat Guy, and that didn't suit him. He craved strength to protect everyone. Shinjo asked him what he thought of Leonora. Mido bitterly admitted that they were pawns to her, and Guy lied when he assured her that they would not be touched as long as they obeyed. Shinju clarified, "So if Leonora orders it, they will fight the Demon King to the death?" Mido nodded, understanding that their fate was sealed, but declared that he would fight the Demon King himself as a hero in order to bargain for a better life for his classmates. Shinjo, calling his plan noble, doubted whether Leonora would agree. Mido firmly replied that he was swinging the sword for her calling. At this moment, Leonora came out to the students, praising them for completing the task. Steady ran to her, but she announced that she and Guy would be leaving for a few days, and the candidates would remain under his supervision. The classmates, alarmed, asked where they were going. Leonora confirmed the departure, wished him success, and left with Guy. A knight standing to the side, worried, asked the lady if everything was okay, and noticed that Arashi was clearly up to something. Leonora agreed, assuming that he was preparing a rebellion. Guy asked her what she would do. Leonora, smiling, replied that she wanted to see what he would come up with, and for now she suggested that he turn a blind eye to it. She acknowledged that Arashi, as a hero candidate, was developing, and there was a chance that others would join forces with him, but she was certain that she could not be defeated. Guy agreed and noted that it might even be profitable. Leonora explained that the rebellion was an excuse to show them their place, gradually breaking their spirit. She mentioned another suspicious character, Shinju Kai, but was undecided whether to touch him. Meanwhile, Shinjo, training in the forest, fought with the Val lizard. Perfecting his throwing technique, he plunged the knife into the monster's head, killing it in 13 seconds. After activating evaluation, he analyzed himself. Killing the demon raised his level, but how to put it into practice? Suddenly he noticed an ogre attacking from behind. After throwing 3 knives, Shinjo realized that the monster's skin was too tough. Deciding to experiment, he activated the new skill, Display Weaknesses, after seeing the ogre's vulnerable points. Sneaking up, he threw the knives into the soft areas of the skin, killing the monster. Satisfied, Shinju noted that the skill was useful, but its power was still low. To survive in this world, he needs to become much stronger. Shinju Kai, surrounded by monsters, once again activated Weakness Display. Finding the vulnerable points of the brain and heart, he threw knives, but not all the creatures died instantly. The skill proved effective against normal monsters, and the hero began to think about finding other species to test. Suddenly he heard footsteps. It was Kanzaki Rin who was looking for him. Shinjo asked what she was doing in the forest in the middle of the night. Rin replied that she had walked around the dorm, but not finding it, she decided to check the forest, and was not mistaken. Shinjo, reminding her of the danger, ordered her to return. Rin countered that she should be the one saying that. Shinjo chuckled and said that he was used to nighttime forays, and that fighting monsters in the dark was not easy. Rin, using control, ordered him to stop and explain what he was doing. Shinjo admitted that he was experimenting with a new blessing, recalling Steady's words about the possibility of receiving additional gifts as he levels up. Rin, intrigued, asked what blessing he had received. Shinjo, by evasively answering that there was no point in telling, angered her. She snorted and said that she had worried for nothing. Shinjo, surprised, asked if she was worried about him. Rin, embarrassed, began to make excuses, but the hero interrupted her and repeated that she should come back. Rin stubbornly declared that she would stay. Suddenly, she noticed smoke and flames ahead where monsters were attacking people. In the center of the battle stood Mido Shuji, protecting the girl with his sword. Nagasho Rina, concentrating fire in her hands, screamed in panic, not understanding what was happening. Mido, fighting back, ordered to deal with the monsters first. Shinju and Rin rushed towards the burning dorm, where the battle was in full swing. Shinjo, stunned, muttered that he went out for a walk and this happened. Narumi, who escaped the fire, said that he himself was unaware that they were attacked by a horde of monsters. Shinju, analyzing, noticed that this looked like a human tactic and there must be an organizer somewhere nearby. Steady, appearing, praised him for his intelligence. Shinjo, having guessed, asked if these monsters were from his research center. Steady confirmed that these were his cute samples, enhanced with drugs to carry out the plan. Shinjo demanded to know why the hero candidates were being killed. Steady coldly replied that he had received orders from above to destroy them, even at the cost of his position, which he did not hold. Kanzaki Rin, in shock, asked if the order was from Leonora. Steady laughed, clarifying that fox had nothing to do with it. The Demon King himself had ordered it. If he completes the task, he will be allowed to continue his research. Shinjo realized that Steady was so obsessed with monsters that he was rotten to the bone. Steady, with a fanatical gleam in his eyes, declared that he would not understand the essence of monsters while remaining human. Steady, with a mad grin, ordered the monsters to attack even more furiously. Shinju Kai shouted for Kanzaki Rin to act. She activated control, causing the monsters to freeze, and redirected them towards Steady, ordering them to attack. He just laughed, calling it a pathetic attempt. He snapped his fingers and broke her spell, reminding her that as a monster researcher, he always had a way to pacify them. Steady commanded the creatures to attack again. Shinjo, shouting at Rin to duck, began to slit the throats of the orcs, one after another, before they could attack. Steady, watching, was amazed by the hero's skill, his thirst for blood, and the cunning of the killer. But admiration gave way to anger. Why were his monsters, in squads, losing to a guy without a useful blessing? Shinju activated Assess and scanned Steady. Level F, half-demon status, Skill Arabic Witchcraft Level 1. Now everything became clear. Rin's control did not work on monsters subordinated to the order of a higher-level demon. Steady, realizing that there was no way back, decided to play his trump card. Shinjo, sensing something was wrong, asked what he was up to. Steady, smiling, replied that the hero would soon understand everything himself, and it would be better for him to get rid of him now. At that moment, a fireball burst into flames in front of Shinjo, transformed into a huge red dragon, the strongest monster, Steady. The dragon roared and attacked, destroying the building. Stones rained down on the heroes. Kanzaki Rin, paralyzed with terror, was unable to dodge. But Shinjo, instantly pushing her aside, protected her from the debris. He warned that another attack would soon follow, and told Narumi to grab Rin and run. He himself remained against the dragon. The creature was getting closer, but Shinjo, without losing his cool, used Assessment, revealing a weak spot. Throwing the knife at the indicated point, he realized that the scales were too strong. His attack did not leave even a scratch. The hero frantically looked for a way out, but at that moment Arashi appeared. When he saw the dragon, he decided that the creature was within his reach. Activating Explosion, Arashi unleashed a powerful blow, causing the dragon to roar in pain. But he, not giving up, released a fiery breath straight at Arashi, leaving burns on him. Arashi, having relaxed after the attack, paid the price. Mido Shuji ran up and shouted to him to listen carefully. Together, they could defeat the dragon. Arashi, not understanding Mido's request, snapped back, asking what benefit he would gain from teamwork. Shinjo Kai intervened, explaining that he knew the dragon's weak points, but his power was not enough to hit them, and suggested that Arashi use his power. The dragon, returning, attacked with renewed vigor. Arashi, unwilling to cooperate, nevertheless realized that he couldn't handle it alone when the monster approached and unleashed a series of blows. Shinjo sarcastically suggested that he act on his own if he was so confident. Arashi, with a heavy heart, asked where to hit. Shinjo pointed to the upside-down scale on the dragon's throat as a vulnerable point to attack with an explosion. Arashi, after asking if he could handle it, confidently stated that it was no problem, and they got down to business. Steady, in a rage, ordered the red dragon to destroy the enemies. The creature, radiating a fiery aura, increased its onslaught. Shinjo distracted the monster from the front, giving Arashi a chance to sneak up behind him. Arashi shouted at the lizard to die, activating Explosion, hitting the vulnerable scale. The dragon froze, roared in pain, and collapsed, destroyed. Steady, stunned, could not believe that his trump card had fallen. Shinjo, looking at him coldly, asked what he would do without the dragon. Steady bluffed that he still had many monsters, but Shinjo reminded him that the rest had already been dealt with. The classmates united and began to attack Steady. Steady, overcome with panic, realized that there was nowhere to run. Narumi jumped up and used magic to push him off the high wall he was standing on. Steady fell into the water, gasping for breath. The tip of Shinjo's sword flashed before his face. The hero, holding him back, said that Steady attacked them at night, but dragged out the fight. And now he has a lot of questions. Steady, begging for mercy, promised to tell everything. But suddenly the water, as if alive, began to pull him in even more strongly. A moment later, he choked and died. The classmates, shocked, did not understand what had happened. Shinjo explained that it was probably a curse technique. While digging through the library's archives, he had read about similar spells that could work if a traitor was willing to reveal secrets. Mido, thinking, suggested that Steady was killed by a curse to prevent him from giving up the information. This meant that the threat from the Demon King's army would only grow. The day after the incident with Steady, her classmates were horrified, and Leonora could not believe that such a thing had happened in her absence. Narumi, indignant, reproached her for entrusting them to Steady and asked if she hadn't suspected anything. Leonora apologized, clarifying that she didn't expect such damage from a monster lord of Steady's level. The students, stunned, realized that she knew about his essence, but did nothing. Leonora recalled that she had warned about the stricter training, and this was only the beginning. Classmates, remembering the burning dormitory and the death threat, were outraged. Guy sharply ordered them not to relax even at night, otherwise they would face instant death. Shinjo Kai thought even he didn't notice the horde of monsters in time, and to demand such a thing from school children is madness. Leonora, changing the subject, announced that they would soon go to the capital, where a parade would be held in their honor so that the people could see the heroes. The students were surprised why this was necessary. Guy, preparing the horses, said that he and the knights would set out at dawn. In the evening they set up camp with tents, fires, and a guard of 30 soldiers, among whom there were no serious fighters. Arashi, having gathered his classmates, noticed that there was little security, and this was the perfect moment for their plan. They looked at each other, agreeing. Usually there are more soldiers, and these are weak, and besides, the knights underestimate them, not expecting a rebellion. Arashi called on Narumi and the others to act immediately. Shinjo, watching, realized that Arashi was right. The security was weak, but only because Leonora and Guy were confident in their strength. The hero needs more time to figure them out. Shinjo approached Mido Shuji, asking for a minute. At night, when everyone except the guards were asleep, Arashi's team moved into the forest to keep an eye on the camp from behind the trees. But their plan was thwarted by Mido's team. He knew that Arashi was plotting to kill Leonora and the soldiers. Arashi, in shock, asked who had blabbed. Mido admitted that he accidentally overheard at his tent. Nagasho Rina, shocked, asked if they really wanted to kill, calling it madness. Arasi, furious, accused them of weakness, asking how long they would dance to Leonora's tune. Mido, understanding his anger, said that killing was not the answer and asked if Arashi had a plan. Mido offered to become Leonora's pawn, defeat the monsters, and in exchange negotiate safety and housing for everyone. Arasi asked skeptically if he thought she would agree. Mido replied that once he became stronger, he would make her listen. Arashi waved it off, stating that he didn't need protection, and told Mido to get lost, preparing to return to his world. Mido's team firmly responded that they would stop him. Looking at each other tensely, they prepared for battle. Arashi attacked with lightning speed, using his incredible speed and strength, but Mido blocked the blow. At this moment, the knights noticed the commotion and approached, demanding an explanation. Mido apologetically called it an ordinary quarrel. The knights, reminding them of the early rise, ordered them to sort things out later. Arashi, seething with anger, muttered that Mido's softness infuriated him. In the sacred capital of Digrest, crowds stunned Narumi. He noted that it was not as stuffy here as in Tokyo, although the noise from people irritated some of his classmates. Guy barked and ordered the townspeople to make way. The saint was riding towards them with a group of hero candidates. The people, hearing about them, exploded with delight, calling them God's chosen ones. The protagonist, watching, thought they had not lied about the residents' hopes, but it was alarming. At the castle they were met by the Holy Knight Rains, who offered them a rest in a luxurious hotel. The students were delighted. Spacious rooms, spa for girls, an exquisite buffet and a huge training hall. However, Shinjo, without relaxing, decided to gather information. There were a lot of guards in the castle, and moving stealthily was risky. He noticed Rains talking to the knights about the new arrivals. The Holy Knight mentioned that the heroes were resting in the guest quarters. The listeners, amazed, asked if it was true that God the Creator had chosen them. Rains confirmed that their powers are unusual for normal children, so it must be true. One of the knights expressed concern that the candidates might attract the attention of the Demon King's believers, who might take advantage of their appearance. He noted the cultists' recent suspicious actions. Having overheard, the hero was surprised by the mention of these believers. While insisting that protection is provided, Rains acknowledged the need for caution before training. Deciding to find out more, Shinjo went into town. At the bar, while ordering an ale, he overheard the locals. One mocked the skinny heroes, but the other, frightened, ordered them to be silent. The saint approved of them, and the church will punish for such words. Realizing that the church in Digrest had more influence than the king and the aristocrats, the boy introduced himself to the bartender as a wanderer interested in local customs. He asked about the Demon King's believers. The interlocutor explained that the country was fighting the army of the Demon King, a powerful monster that some worshipped, admiring his strength. These sectarians, operating throughout the country, recently destroyed several aristocratic houses. After clarifying that they were terrorists, Shinjo learned that only the candidates were capable of defeating the enemy, and that the believers hiding in the capital could soon strike. Kanzaki Rin, looking for her partner, was happy to find him, but shouted, asking where he had disappeared to. The hero explained that he was collecting data about the capital because they knew nothing about it. The girl, understanding, reproached him for his solitary forays, offering to help. The guy, telling her not to stand out and to stick with the class, irritated her. Outraged by his coldness, she insisted on participating. Relenting, Shinjo agreed. She could ask the townspeople. Satisfied, Rin continued through the streets, ready to gather information. The protagonist was upset when he realized that he hadn't learned anything useful. But the knowledge of the Demon King's believers was already valuable. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, a strange noise made him leave the room. Outside the door, classmates were raging. After asking what was going on, he heard that Kanzaki Rin had gone missing. They searched the dorm, but her roommate, Motono, noticed that the girl had not returned. No one knew where she could have disappeared to. Shinjo thought he himself had been absent for a long time, but, living alone, he had remained unnoticed. After calming his classmates, he admitted that the situation was alarming. When they asked if he knew anything, the boy apologized, saying that he was asleep and did not see anything. Mito Shuji, standing in the middle of the group, announced that she was definitely not in the castle, and night was approaching. They had to look in the streets. Nagasho Rina assured that Rin could handle it herself, but since everyone insisted, she was ready to help. Shinjo, realizing that the city had long since fallen asleep in the dead of night, went out into the streets. While wandering through the alleys, he noticed Rin's student card on the ground. Having picked it up, the hero felt danger. Several cloaked figures who had been following him attacked with swords. Fighting back, he delivered precise blows, killing the attackers one after another. Having won, the boy contemptuously called them amateurs, weak both in fencing and in stealth. Activating assessment, he demanded to know everything, but realized that the opponents were already dead. Meanwhile, Rin, tied up, fought off interrogation. She firmly stated that she would not say anything, despite the threats. The villains, grinning, said that they only needed candidates for heroes and began to tear her clothes, checking how long she would remain silent. Shinjo, having tracked down her location, hid behind a column. After analyzing the enemies, he saw two weaklings and was surprised how they were able to grab the girl. Throwing two knives, the hero hit them in the head. Rin, who was scared, sighed with relief when she saw her partner. He ran up, asked if everything was okay, and began to untie the chains, putting off the questions. Having freed her, the guy suddenly noticed a new threat. A man with a sword jumped up to them and struck the floor nearby with his blade. It was Rains, the Holy Knight, who coldly declared that the candidates could not be left alive. Shinju, shocked, realized who was in front of him, but he corrected him. It would be better to call him the head of the Demon King Church. The hero realized that the enemy had penetrated the top of Digrest. Rains, with a fanatical gleam in his eyes, declared that the murder of the candidates would hasten the day of destruction. The protagonist, using assessment, studied Rains. All of the knight's stats were at level B, a versatile fighter requiring maximum vigilance. Deciding to attack first, Shinjo rushed forward, but his opponent easily parried his blows. Rains concentrated the seal in his palm, causing fire to scorch his enemies. Surprised by such a technique, the hero dodged, but the knight, clutching a flaming sword, approached, mocking that he couldn't escape in the air. Declaring the fight futile, he swung for the finishing blow. Suddenly, Shinjo pulled out a gun and shot him straight in the head. Rains collapsed dead. Shinjo, lamenting, realized that he did not want to use the weapon. The ammunition was limited. The knight was right. The jump was a mistake. You need to hone your melee skills to survive in this world. Kanzaki Rin, shocked, asked where he got the gun from. The partner reminded that in their world he was a hired killer, and weapons came naturally to him. The girl, shuddering, admitted that the thought of a gun at her side was frightening, but thanked him for saving her. Shinju dismissed it as a coincidence and asked why she didn't use control. Rin explained that the handcuffs blocked her power, but she was okay now. Picking up his jacket from the floor, the hero noted that there were strange instruments in this world and ordered them to leave. Rin reported that she overheard enemies planning an attack on her classmates. Shinjo confirmed that one of the attackers he left alive told the same story. The prisoner, begging for mercy, explained that their king considered the candidates an insult and ordered their destruction. The main character asked if she had been killed. The guy clarified that she was alive and they wanted to use her as a hostage. After interrogating Kanzaki, they headed to the hotel. In the morning, unlike Steady, the curse did not affect them, because these fanatics are not connected with demons. Rin, outraged, called them cultists, disappointed in the people of this world. Shinjo advised her not to lose her vigilance, reproaching her for her naivety. The enemies took advantage of her gullibility. Rin defended herself by saying that they were polite in answering her questions. The hero asked skeptically if it seemed suspicious. The girl, with her head down, admitted her mistake. Suddenly, Mido Shuji ran up to them, happily hugging Rin. She apologized for disturbing him, but the group leader waved her off, glad that they were safe. When he asked if Shinjo had found her, he received an affirmative answer. The hero asked for a minute to discuss something important. He told about the Church of the Demon King, fanatics who worship an all-powerful enemy and destroy people. Their target is hero candidates. Mido, surprised, noted that people as enemies are more complex than monsters. They are harder to figure out. We need to warn the others, and Leonora could use some extra security. Rin countered that the saint would most likely tell them to figure it out themselves. Mido agreed, but insisted on gathering his classmates, since they were looking for Rin around the city. At that moment there was a loud explosion. Dark smoke rose in the distance. They were fanatics, but now there were dozens of them. Mido asked if the enemies knew where to look for their group. Shinjo, noticing their approach, ordered his classmates to prepare for defense. The protagonist quickly assessed the enemies using the skill. Their strength ranged from F to D rank, 6 in total, and their skills were significantly inferior to Rain's. It was a fighting force, but a weak one, and Shinjo decided that he could handle it without difficulty. Together with the team, they stood in a circle, taking the blows. He ordered Kanzaki Rin to act. The girl used control, ordering the attackers to stop. They froze, confused, but not all obeyed. The hero, without wasting time, threw knives, striking the foreheads of his opponents. Dozens of enemies fell dead. Mido Shuji, in a panic, made a remark, pointing out that these were people, not monsters. Shinjo, coldly asking what the problem was, reminded that enemies were enemies, and that was enough to destroy them. At that moment, another enemy snuck up behind Mido, swinging his sword. The leader managed to block the blow, but realized how close death was. He shouted at the enemy why they were acting like monsters when they were all human. The attacker, with a fanatical look, replied that everything was for the sake of their master. Shinjo told Rin not to interfere, telling Mido that it was time to stop being soft. Mido swung his sword and cut his opponent's sword in half. He froze, looking at the debris in horror. The leader offered to surrender, promising mercy if the sword was thrown away. The enemy, screaming in rage, accused him of mockery and rushed to attack, wounding Mido in the shoulder. Laughing hysterically, he didn't notice how the leader's sword flared brighter. Mido pierced him through and through, killing him. Shinjo ordered to finish off the enemy, but Mido objected that he was already dead. The hero, objecting that this was not a fact, insisted on eliminating any threats. Mido, in anger, shouted that Shinjo was too calm because they were the same people. The hero coldly replied that it was a matter of choice. Kill now or wait for the enemy to attack again. Is the life of a stranger really more important than his classmates? Isn't Mido the strongest in the class? The leader exhaled and admitted that he was right. With a sigh, he cut the enemy's body in half and ordered the others to help. Arashi, fighting with another gang, finished off the last enemy. Clenching his fist, he used explosion, shouting for him to die. The enemy fell dead. Classmates saw the bully as a ruthless fighter. At that moment, Nagasho Reina appeared, incinerating her opponents with fire and demanding that they burn. Surprised by the number of enemies, she noticed her classmates dodging the fight and reminded them that they knew how to fight. Let them fight at least one-on-one. They, horrified, explained that they could not kill people. Rina, irritated, insisted, "If they don't kill, they will be killed." But every time they approached the enemies, the classmates shied away, unable to raise their hands. Rina, confused, did not understand their weakness. Leonora, watching from afar, wondered how to judge their preparation in this chaos. The enemies instantly recognized the saint among their targets. Leonora calmly explained that the hero candidates were under her command, and her presence in a moment of danger was natural. The opponents mocked her, asking if she was really going to save them without the knights, and if she was making fun of them. The saint calmly called them amateurs, blinded by the Demon King's power, and declared that they were no match for her. Enraged, the villains ordered her to be silent and rushed to attack from all sides. But she activated the skill prostrate, causing them to collapse to the ground, unable to move. Resistance seemed impossible. Nagasho Rina, amazed, noted the similarity of this power to Kanzaki Rin's ability to control bodies. Leonora, slightly irritated, clarified that she did not like comparisons, because her technique of enslavement surpassed everything. Her classmates, stunned, asked why she helped. The saint reminded them that she was assessing their preparation and would prefer that they handle it themselves. Rina agreed and offered to thank her. Leonora waved it off, saying that it was her duty to guide her subordinates. One of the enemies, still alive, tried to interrupt her, shouting at her not to dare ignore them and asking what would happen to them. The saint, apologizing for her forgetfulness, ordered the candidates to finish off the remaining ones. The disciples had no choice. The saint began to completely control their bodies. One of the girls, in tears, dealt the fatal blow with a sword. Shinju Kai, watching from the roof, analyzed. This was the third-level enslavement technique. Kanzaki Rin, standing nearby, noted that the saint's power was many times greater than her control, subduing the crowd on an incredible scale. They need to figure out how to counter this. Half a day had passed since the Demon King's believers had attacked. Hashimoto approached the fighters and asked how they were holding up. Rina admitted that the shock still hasn't worn off. Narumi, gritting his teeth, accused the saint of manipulation. She used them as puppets, forcing them to kill with her hands. It was inhumane. He asked Rina if the saint controlled her body. She shrugged her shoulders and replied that she didn't care. But the irritation remained, because not everyone is so stable. And this is Leonora's fault. Mido Shuji, on the contrary, blamed himself, believing that he had not managed to protect everyone. His classmates supported him, assuring him that he had saved them. But Shinjo, interrupting Rin, finished the thought. Even with greater speed, the outcome would have been the same. The saint is too much for them. After defeating the believers, they and Mido split into groups to save the people. They managed to help a few, but they didn't get to Rina's team. The Demon King cult won't retreat anytime soon, but by killing their leader, Reince, the hero has forced them to lie low. Something else is more important now. Turning to Rin, he asked if she would agree to the mission. The girl nodded, but as she left the room, she suspected something was wrong. The partner explained, in order to resist Leonora's enslavement, the help of someone with similar strength is needed. Rin, stunned, asked what was required. The hero proposed a test. Let her use control on him. The girl, horrified, rejected the idea. The day after the defeat of the Demon King's sect, a grand parade was held in the capital of Digrest in honor of the hero candidates. Their victory over the fanatics won the hearts of the townspeople, who greeted them with delight, praising them for their salvation. But the main character couldn't help but wonder, could the saint have planned everything from the very beginning? If so, she is an extremely dangerous opponent. Leonora, having gathered the candidates, announced that they were returning to the temple city of Alpha, the place of their summoning, which was under her control. Mido Shuji asked if she would go with them. The saint explained that she would remain to deal with the consequences of the incident and that others would accompany them. Nagasho Rina reminded that the dorm in Alpha burned down. The joke caused panic in one of the girls, Naomi, who began to shake with fear. Rina, noticing this, asked if everything was okay. Naomi mumbled apologetically that she was fine. Leonora, sensing the tension, moved closer, but Naomi stepped back, almost falling. Rina ran up and tried to calm her friend down, and she again assured her that everything was fine. The saint smiled and said that since it was nothing to worry about, she was leaving, but would see them again. Rina, having guessed the reason for the fear, angrily attacked Leonora, but Naomi stopped her, insisting that it did not matter. The saint turned around and left. Guy announced that the detachment would move out at night and stop in tents to rest. Arashi's team, secluded in the forest, discussed a new plan. Shinjo, watching, realized that they were ready to act. Kanzaki Rin was surprised by their determination, but her partner explained, without Leonora and with only 30 weak guards, this was the perfect time to kill Guy. Given the circumstances, he saw no reason to interfere. In the forest, Guy talked with Narumi, who was telling him in all seriousness about a dragon that supposedly lived nearby. Leading the knight through the thicket, he assured him that the beast was somewhere nearby. Guy, lost in thought, noted that the road led to the capital, and the dragon was threatening the travelers. It was necessary to report to the tamers. Suddenly, Narumi screamed, pointing at something. At that moment, Arashi, sneaking up from behind, attacked Guy, activating Explosion. Narumi jumped back, avoiding the blow. The knight, wounded in the back, turned around, calling Arashi a traitor. The bully, surprised that Guy survived the powerful blow, chuckled, calling him a tough old man. But the knight, having declared that this was his territory, had no intention of losing. Arashi, using Explosion again, reminded him that they had lured him into a trap with traps set up everywhere. Guy tried to defend himself with a blessing, but the blow hit him. The knight, admitting that he had underestimated Arashi, still found the strength to rise. The hooligan, shouting that there would be no mercy, vowed to kill him at any cost. Guy, realizing that the situation was critical, raised his hand and launched a blue ball into the sky. It exploded into a huge fireworks display. The candidates, stunned, did not understand what it meant. Shinjo raised his head and muttered that Arashi had completely failed. The soldiers immediately recognized the salute as a distress signal and began to look around, realizing that Guy had not been seen for a long time. Suspecting an attack, the knights decided to rush to the signal. At that moment, Shinjo Kai slipped out of the shadows, slitting the throat of one of them. Quickly running up to each one, he killed them one by one, noting that it was nothing personal. But their death was necessary. The knights tried to fight back, but his experience proved insurmountable. They couldn't understand why the candidate for hero turned against them. Ignoring their pleas, he dealt a few more fatal blows, and everyone collapsed to the ground. The hero candidates surrounded Guy, attacking from all sides. The knight fought back desperately, holding back the onslaught. Narumi used wind magic, sending a powerful gust towards his opponent. Another candidate used a support technique, strengthening her spear attacks. Guy, impressed by their coordination, parried a blow from one of the attackers, but noted that the attack was weak. The enemy pressed down on the sword, activating the blessing of steel, causing the knight to jump back. Recognizing the power of their blessings, he found himself at a disadvantage. Suddenly, Arashi appeared, sneaking up from behind. Using the explosion technique, he delivered several powerful blows, tearing off Guy's arm. The knight, bleeding, could barely hold on. Arashi noted his stubbornness, and Narumi assumed that the salute was a signal for help, deciding to buy time. Guy, with his last breath, admitted that everything was already pointless. Leonora, watching from afar, mentally turned to the knight, noting his struggle. Mido Shuji, arriving on the battlefield, froze in horror, not understanding what was happening. Seeing Kanzaki Rin holding back the knights, he knew that she was following orders. The leader, in shock, could not understand what orders were being discussed. Nagasho Rina, amazed, noted that Rin was not the type to submit to someone else's will. Shinjo, apologizing to Rina, clarified that he was the one who gave the order. Rin explained that she had caught 7, but several had managed to escape, and her partner reassured her by telling her that he had already eliminated the rest. Mido ran up and demanded not to talk about the murders, but the hero coldly confirmed that he had destroyed the last soldiers. Rin, watching, noted his dispassion. Mido, in despair, asked why he did this. Shinjo explained that Arashi and his friends were busy with Guy, and he dealt with the small stuff. Mido, realizing why Arashi appeared so rarely, understood everything. Rina asked if this meant that the rebellion was a serious plan. The hero sarcastically pointed to the soldiers as proof. Mido couldn't help but ask if he had joined Arashi thinking they were on the same side. Shinjo replied that he was acting in his own interests and advised the leader to focus on Arashi rather than waste time on them. Mido, angry, mentally promised to return to this conversation. Telling his team to follow him, he decided to stop Arashi. Leonora noticed that the candidates had cornered Guy. The knight, hanging his head, admitted his defeat. Narumi turned to Arashi, asking what to do with the fallen one. The bully replied that they had no choice. They would do what they had to. Otherwise, they would have to run with their tails between their legs. The candidates became wary, realizing that the saint could control them. Leonora confirmed that her enslavement technique was weaker the stronger the opponent. But their blessings were child's play compared to her miraculous power, which allowed her to subjugate everyone at once. Arashi called her a coward, assuring her that in a fair fight she would have lost. The saint, smiling, considered this a cheap provocation, but agreed to show them how she breaks off her claws. Guy, worried, asked the lady if she was going to use enslavement. Leonora, interrupting him, reminded him of her divine mercy, which surpassed all. At that moment, Arashi rushed at her with his former fury. The saint simply raised her hand, and the ground beneath the hooligan rose up, knocking him off his feet. He froze, not understanding what had happened. She then summoned a powerful wind that injured him. Narumi rushed to support his comrade. But Leonora, without stopping, used a fire technique, bringing down flames on the other opponents. She then created a water ball, sucking one of the candidates into it, who began to suffocate. Smiling, the saint asked if this was all they could do. Arashi, rising with difficulty, declared that the fight was not over, and she had not won. Suddenly, Mido Shuji intervened, calling on the bully to stop and think about the consequences of the riot. Arashi, irritated, asked if the leader really wanted to force him to stop and remain inactive like he did. Mido asked if the others shared his opinion. Narumi, apologizing, admitted that he did not trust the leader. Nagasho Reina supported Narumi by offering to join the rebellion once it had started. Hashimoto, outraged, objected to her friend, arguing that brute force was not the answer. Leonora, observing the split, noted that it happened too quickly. The riot had begun, and now the candidates could not simply disperse and pretend that nothing had happened. Concentrating her power in her hand, she unleashed a furious wind upon them. Narumi tried to protect his comrades by using his magic, but the whirlwind, spinning like a hurricane, knocked everyone off their feet, scattering them throughout the forest. Mido stood up and asked how everyone was holding up. Arashi, noticing his panic, told him not to lose his head, reminding him that no one had died, and the leader would not be able to protect everyone. The saint will put them on their shoulder blades if they do not make a decision. Mido, clutching his sword, admitted that there was no way out. Rina intervened, sarcastically asking if it had finally dawned on him, since her patience was running out. Hashimoto reluctantly agreed to participate, seeing no other way. The candidates, divided, stood against each other. Leonora, watching, reminded them why she was so valuable to them. In the forest, Shinju Kai and Kanzaki Rin discussed the plan. The hero explained that the real fun would begin when the saint used enslavement, and until then, they would leave the dirty work to others. Leonora noticed that Guy was in a hopeless situation and suggested that he go first, despite his wounds. The knight, grateful for the trust, agreed. The saint concentrated sacred power, healing him. A new arm grew from the stump, and he was fully restored, ready to fight against the candidates. Narumi realized that their efforts were in vain, since they had spent so much energy on his defeat. Nagasho Rina tried to calm her comrade, reminding him that their strength had also increased, and now they were fighting together. Leonora gave the signal to begin, calling the battle a test. If they did not defeat them, they would not become heroes. Mido Shuji, having ordered to cover him, rushed forward, repelling Guy's attacks. The knight, struck by the radiance of the leader's sword, realized that a simple block would destroy his blade. Leonora summoned ice, forming dozens of crystals that rushed towards Mido. Rina concentrated her fire and launched a fireball that melted some of the fragments. The saint, delighted with her skill, asked if she could repeat it. Mido, meanwhile, dodged the ice spikes, but the danger was growing. Narumi warned about the rocks flying above the leader. Hashimoto used telekinesis to lift them up, asking what to do. Narumi activated the wind cutter, attacking the saint. But her defense deflected the blows, and the stones fell at her feet. Leonora, smiling, declared herself to be God's favorite, immune to witchcraft and blessings. The candidates froze, realizing the power of her blessing. The protagonist, using assessment, studied the saint. Her magic power was S rank. Her attack was A rank, but her defense was low, although she was not threatened by physical attacks thanks to Guy. Arashi continued to press the knight, but to no avail. Guy mockingly asked if the hooligan had really run out of steam without the explosions. Arashi, confident, declared that he could manage without them, entrusting Mido to deal with the knight, while he himself took on the saint. Mido, clutching his sword, realized that his blessing was useless against Leonora. Suddenly, his comrade handed him an ordinary iron blade. After thanking him, the leader felt a surge of determination. Leonora, watching, noted his readiness to fight. Mido, mentally remembering someone's instructions, rushed at her, repelling the sharp auras emanating from the saint. Narumi realized that without blessings, their team was useless, and Arashi, fighting close, risked hurting his own. Hashimoto agreed and suggested not to interfere, just observing. Arashi, attacking Guy, surprised him with his speed and skill. With a powerful blow, he knocked the knight down, mocking his slowness. Guy, breathing heavily, reminded that Arashi had exhausted his own blessing. Leonora, meanwhile, was raining fireballs down on Mido. The leader, retreating, realized that at this rate he would not get closer to her. We need to find another way to defeat the saint. Leonora, with a slight smile, noted that she expected such agility from Mido Shuji, since only a few were able to dodge her techniques with such grace. The leader, gritting his teeth, understood that until he closed the distance, the fight would remain a one-sided game. Blessings have no effect on the saint, and her mastery of long-range attacks makes Nagasho Reina and the others useless in this fight. The only chance to get closer at any cost. Deciding to act more quickly, he began to make his way towards his opponent, maneuvering between her spells. Leonora, noticing his persistence, called upon the wind, creating a powerful whirlwind. Mido, enveloping himself in an aura, rushed forward, closing his eyes to concentrate. The saint wasted no time in activating her dive technique, shrouding the battlefield in darkness, and unleashed a fireball that was brighter than the sun, straight at the boy. Nagasho Reina, in horror, could not believe that the leader was in such danger, and no one could help. Leonora, watching, mentally noted that Mido was unconsciously strengthening his body with magic, capable of releasing all his power at a critical moment. It was a rare talent, but still inferior to her power. The fire consumed the leader, and, mortally wounded, he collapsed to the ground, lifeless. Meanwhile, Arashi continued to fight with Guy. Realizing that explosions were no longer usable, he frantically searched for a way to defeat the knight. Guy, sensing his doubts, called the bully a brat and attacked, plunging his sword into his stomach. Arashi, stunned, began to fall, not believing that he was losing to a half-dead old man. The knight, approaching, mocked him, asking if this was all he could do without a blessing, and called him an amateur. The bully gritted his teeth as he replayed the training in his head. He was no pushover. With an excited smile, he focused his strength, ignoring the pain. As Guy swung again, Arashi overcame himself and punched the knight in the face. He flew several meters away and collapsed. Mido Shuji, lying on the ground, remembered his friends and their suffering. He couldn't let them die. A blue aura flared around his body, and to everyone's amazement, he stood up as if he had come back to life. Leonora, narrowing her eyes, acknowledged his steadfastness, but assured him that he would not be able to get close to her. Mido, concentrating his strength, rushed at the saint with unprecedented speed. In an instant he was so close that she jumped back and noticed cuts on her body. Shocked, she couldn't believe she had let her guard down. But then, using magic, she healed the wounds and created a barrier, preventing the leader from getting closer. Mido, without stopping, tore down obstacles, sweeping away everything in his path. The saint, feeling panic for the first time, recalled that she acted extremely carefully. But the guy's speed exceeded her expectations. His blessing of speed, a gift from God, made him a worthy opponent. Mido, interrupting her thoughts, stated that he asked God only for the strength to protect his loved ones. Activating the skill, he rushed towards her again, holding his sword to her throat. Leonora froze and coldly replied that this was not enough. At that moment, there was a loud roar. Narumi, still unable to move, froze in panic. The saint reluctantly declared that she had not wanted to resort to this, but had no choice. She pulled out her trump card. Shinju Kai, standing in the forest, turned to Kanzaki Rin and said that it was time to act. Leonora admitted with cold confidence that she had not expected to resort to enslavement techniques, but the candidates had lived up to her expectations. Mido Shuji gritted his teeth and didn't move, and his classmates rushed towards him, but the saint waved her hand and ordered everyone to freeze. She praised them for their efforts, declaring that they had passed the test, although Guy's defeat was unexpected. For her, this is not a problem. A knight can always be replaced as long as the candidates are under her control. Narumi, thinking, realized that they had been drawn into a war with no chance of winning. Mido realized that without a way to counter her technique, they were doomed. The saint explained that the ritual of summoning the candidates was only allowed because of her ability to control them. Otherwise, they would become a threat to Digrest. Isn't that what they think? Suddenly, dozens of daggers flew towards her, but she, calling upon earth magic, erected a barrier that repelled the attack. Leonora, smiling, asked where the attacker was hiding, and whether it was his fault that her guards had died. Shinju Kai, emerging from the shadows, only remarked that he was surprised by her attention to a simple guy like him. She replied that from the very beginning he seemed strange to her. Having received a weak blessing, he showed no emotion, and it was difficult to call him an amateur. She admitted that she was disappointed that he should have better assessed his chances in a fight that he was sure to lose. The hero objected that he himself decides the outcome of the battle. The saint, offering to prove it, used the technique of enslavement, ordering him to freeze. But shots rang out, and a bullet pierced her shoulder. Stunned, she could not understand how he had escaped her charms. The guy, noticing that she instinctively covered her weak points, praised her reaction. Leonora, losing her composure, screamed why he was moving, because her technique should have worked. He kept shooting, and her defense couldn't keep up. The hero explained that he uses deadly weapons from his world with limited ammunition, so he rarely resorts to them. The saint, in a panic, called down fire to burn him, but instead of the guy, only the cloak remained, and he disappeared. Shinju snuck up behind her and put a gun to her head. He noticed that the fight with Mido showed her weakness in close combat, and her technique did not work on him. Leonora, not believing, demanded an explanation. The hero smiled, admitting that he wasn't sure of success, but everything worked out perfectly thanks to Kanzaki Rin. Earlier, he asked her to use control on him. Studying the archives, he found no data on enslavement, but learned that 2 subjugation techniques on one person give priority to the first one applied. Rin, shocked, realized that her control was blocking the saint's technique. The hero suggested that it was possible if her technique surpassed Leonora's divine protection. Rin countered that her power was inferior in scale and strength. Shinjo explained, her control is the first level, and her enslavement is the third. Even if Rin cast the spell first, the saint could interrupt it. But the incident with Steady showed that the first technique had priority. At that time, he thought that Steady had subdued the monsters because of his higher level, but it was a matter of superposition. Leonora's technique probably works the same way. It remained to test this in practice, starting with the range of the control. The saint, realizing too late that Rin had cast control on Shinju, screamed, calling her a copycat. The hero, looking coldly at her, declared that this was her end and pulled the trigger. Leonora, overcome with panic, felt her miraculous power fading away because of the handcuffs that bound her wrists. The boy, holding the same handcuffs taken from the members of the Demon King's sect, noticed that they were capable of blocking even her divine magic. The saint, with a trembling voice, asked what he was going to do with her. The protagonist coldly replied that he was ready to free her if she immediately returned them to their home world. Leonora shook her head and admitted that it was impossible. She could only summon heroes to Digrest, and returning required a completely different technique that she did not possess. Shinju Kai thoughtfully analyzed her words and status using evaluation. Lying was out of the question. She didn't have such a skill. The hero narrowed his eyes and asked if this meant that she had deceived them by promising to return home after defeating the Demon King. The saint explained that calling from another world requires enormous reserves of miraculous power. For this they turned to God himself, and their presence here is his will. After completing the mission, they will probably be returned back. The word probably betrayed her uncertainty, and she added that she had summoned other heroes before them, but none had been able to even get close to the Demon King. Shinjo, sensing a catch, asked what had happened to the previous candidates. Leonora looked down and replied that almost everyone had died from the Demon King's army. The survivors might be in hiding, but she didn't know their whereabouts. The hero understood why she hid the truth. Such revelations could break their resolve. Sooner or later, the Demon King's army would attack, and they would have to fight. Leonora, perking up, offered a deal. They needed the country's support to survive. She was ready to forget about the rebellion if they let her go. The hero, looking coldly at her, said that he understood everything and raised the knife, ordering her to die. Suddenly he was stopped by Mido Shuji. Shinjo, irritated, asked why the leader was interfering, since he seemed to have overcome his naivety. Mido explained that he agreed to help, believing that the saint knew a way to instantly return them home. Since this is impossible, he prefers to maintain his status as a hero candidate. Shinjo reminded them that they had already started a rebellion. Leonora interrupted and assured that she was ready to turn a blind eye to this, as if nothing had happened. The hero, recognizing the logic of her words, still considered the saint too dangerous. She won't be caught off guard a second time, and once freed, she can immediately attack Kanzaki Rin, whose control saved them from enslavement. Hashimoto supported this by noting that not everyone in the class was capable of fighting, and if they were declared criminals, defeating the Demon King would become an unattainable dream. Nagasho Reina reluctantly agreed and suggested finding a way to make the saint keep her word. Narumi, standing on Shinjo's side, stated that he did not trust Leonora. She had already almost killed them, and nothing would stop her from finishing what she started. Mido, after thinking, admitted that Narumi was right, but emphasized that killing the saint would deprive them of any chance. Shinjo understood the leader's concerns, for whom the safety of the class was a priority. The hero himself could have survived alone, but thoughtless actions threatened everyone. Nevertheless, he decided to act. Without asking for consent, he pulled the trigger. The bullet pierced the saint's head, and she fell dead. Classmates froze in shock. Hashimoto, horrified, screamed that he had killed her without waiting for a common decision, calling it unforgivable. Rin, stunned, couldn't believe what had happened. Shinjo looked at his partner and recalled their conversation in the forest. He revealed the plan to capture Leonora and find out how to get back home. If she is not capable of this, he will kill her, even if Mido protects her, and run away. Rin, shocked, asked if he had deliberately taken the blame for killing the saint. The hero confirmed that by allowing several soldiers to escape, he created the appearance that he was the one who started the riot. If he is the only one considered a criminal, the rest will be able to return to the country without any problems. Rin doubted whether everything would go so smoothly. Shinjo replied that if complications arose, her control would help smooth out negotiations with the country. The girl asked why he was taking everything on himself then. The hero assured her that he could handle it alone and told her not to worry. Looking around, his classmates noticed his disappearance. The moon above the forest turned pink. In the distance, in the camp of the Demon King's army, the Supreme General, one of the 4 heavenly kings, the Wind King Winberg, was thinking about the wanderers from another world who were blessed by God. Their attempts to eliminate the candidates failed. He reassured his subordinates, reminding them that their actions in enemy territory were limited. Even if the heroes were left alone, war with humanity was inevitable. The general had expected an easy victory, but now he found the situation much more interesting. On the second day of the journey, the main character, checking the map, realized that there should be a city nearby. Noticing the mountain, he decided to climb higher to survey the horizon. From the top, a view opened up of a small town, half a day's journey away. He got there only by nightfall, which was even better. The killer of the saint would hardly be allowed through the main gate, and it was unknown what they would do to him. Using the hook, he climbed over the wall. The first thing to do was to get money. He took a few coins from the dead soldiers, but it wouldn't last long. Walking through the dark streets, he noticed a bar, an ideal place to gather information. Inside, he was greeted and asked what he would like to order. Having chosen his ale and food, he began to eavesdrop on the conversations of the visitors. The bartender, noticing an unfamiliar face, asked if he was a traveler. The hero, having quickly got his bearings, told a fictitious story, ran away from his hometown, and is now looking for a way to make money. The interlocutor, sympathizing, suggested that his house had been destroyed by the Demon King's army, calling it a catastrophe. Shinjo Kai mentally praised himself for his successful cover story and asked where an undocumented refugee could find work. The bartender advised me to become an adventurer. The guild gives out quests, most often to destroy monsters, but the work is not for weaklings. Having assessed the guy's appearance, he noted that he did not look frail and was surprised that he was traveling alone. The hero, confidently declaring that killing a monster was no problem for him, clarified how to become an adventurer. The process turned out to be simple. All you had to do was register with the guild in the city center, where hands were always needed and documents were not fussy. The bartender, sharing that he himself had once been an adventurer until a knee wound ended his career, served food. The next morning, the hero woke up in a room next to the bar, thanking for the night's lodging. Deciding to stay in the city, he noticed that the girl at the reception did not pay attention to his face. Photography hasn't been invented here yet, so there's no point in being overly cautious. He won't be discovered. Finding the Adventurers Guild, he entered inside. The hall was full of fighters, noisy and confident. Approaching the reception desk, he announced his desire to become an adventurer. The girl nodded and asked for a silver coin for the contribution. After handing it over, he introduced himself as Siren, a 17-year-old refugee from a city destroyed by the Demon King's army. The name Siren, his old code name from his homeworld, came in handy unexpectedly. The data was enough for registration. The guild member explained the rules. Each adventurer is assigned a rank depending on their achievements and skills. S rank for branch leaders, A for masters, D for the middle level, E for those who have received the certificate. Newbies like him start at F rank. By completing tasks, you can increase your reputation and rank. There were requests posted on the board in the room, and she advised choosing something for F rank. After thanking him, he walked over to the board. The tasks for newbies included gathering herbs or killing kobolds, monsters he hadn't met yet. Having chosen the request for kobolds, he was about to take it, when suddenly several adventurers blocked his path, declaring that they were seeing him for the first time. They mocked him, assuring him that the kobolds would quickly finish off such a weakling. Shinjo Kai, holding back his irritation, was surprised to meet such fools. The protagonist, without losing his cool, suggested that the bullying adventurers leave quietly. They, stunned by his audacity, were surprised that the newcomer dared to give them advice. The other fighters in the guild watched the scene and whispered among themselves, "These hooligans always picked on the newcomers, not respecting them." They noticed that the newcomer had no manners, otherwise he would not have tolerated the threats. But instead, Shinjo Kai instantly intercepted the fist of one of the attackers, squeezing it until the bones crunched. The leader of the group, confused, did not understand what was happening and ordered his comrades to teach the impudent man a lesson. They attacked the hero from all sides, but he fought them off with ease, and after a few minutes left them lying on the floor. Calmly taking the request from the board, he left the guild. These mid-level adventurers were many times weaker than any hero candidate, and fighting them was not difficult. Setting off to carry out the task, the hero walked through the forest. According to the information from the request, the kobold's lair was located somewhere nearby. Soon, he noticed fresh tracks on the ground, similar to those of animals, leading deep into the thicket. Deciding that they might be kobolds, he followed them, marveling at how well they hid their presence. Suddenly, a wolf-like monster with a sword in its paws appeared behind him. The hero, amazed, assumed that the kobold had taken the weapons from the people. Jumping back, he dodged the attacks, using earth magic to blind his opponent with mud. Choosing the moment, he threw the knives, hitting the monster's weak points. He fell down dead. Using appraise, Shinjo confirmed that it was a kobold. It wasn't difficult to kill one of these, and he decided to kill a few more for money. Returning to the guild with the kobold ears as proof, he asked if that was enough. The girl at the registration desk, stunned by the number of trophies, did not believe that a newbie had dealt with so many monsters on his own. The hero confirmed, noting that it was more difficult to find them than to kill them, because his combat skills were at their best. But his reconnaissance of the territory was lame. The employee, impressed by his strength, asked him to wait while the reward was prepared. Even weak monsters paid well, and the money would come in handy in the future. Deciding to settle temporarily in the city as an adventurer, he thought that connections with other fighters would help him obtain valuable information. As he was leaving the guild, he noticed a blond man who greeted him warmly. The man looked stronger than the guild bullies and introduced himself as Lyle, a B-rank adventurer who was solving the internal problems of the fighters in the city. Calling the hero by name, Siren, he mentioned that he heard about the guy who beat up his charges. The protagonist, remaining calm, explained that the quarreling adventurers were the ones who started the conflict. Lyle, not believing it, accused him of lying, claiming that Siren had attacked his charges. Waving his fists, he demanded that the excuses stop and promised to make the newcomer answer for everything. His comrades caught up, threatening that this was only the beginning, but the hero easily repelled their attacks. Lyle was slow, his technique clearly self-taught, full of obvious moves and open spots. Shinju Kai mentally noted that the enemy was not used to fighting humans, but as a monster hunter, it was understandable. Lyle, angry, asked why a strong fighter would attack the weak. The hero, calling it a misunderstanding, offered to explain. They went to a bar where Siren told the truth about what happened. Lyle, admitting his mistake, realized that his charges had lied. Blaming himself for not checking the facts, he punished them by telling them to think about their behavior. The hooligans apologized, but Lyle clarified that the apology should be addressed to Siren. Deciding that the conflict was over, he suggested forgetting about it and asked the newcomer a few questions, feeling guilty for jumping to conclusions. Inviting Siren to ask about anything, he expressed his willingness to help. The hero explained that he was traveling and became an adventurer for the money for the journey, but his true goal was to find a way to travel to another world. The listeners gasped in amazement, hearing nothing of the sort for the first time. They assumed that Siren was a hero candidate from another world. He confirmed, specifying that he was looking for a way to where the heroes came from. Lyle thoughtfully noted that this would require rare technology that they did not understand. Siren agreed that the information was difficult to find, but any clue was valuable. Lyle suggested turning to the sage Elben, the king's advisor and an elf. Surprised that Siren didn't know about him, he explained that Elben was a legendary mage over 100 years old, known as a talented spellcaster who drew power from the spirits. Elves, rare creatures, almost a myth, sometimes appear in villages, and Elben is one of them. Even if he doesn't know the technique of returning, his magic can help. One of Lyle's comrades doubted whether the sage was alive, since there had been no news of him for a long time. Lyle apologized and admitted that he didn't know anything more, but hoped that the information would be useful. Siren thanked her, finding her useful, and, noticing the late hour, decided to return to his room. Finally, he allowed Lyle to ask a question. He asked why he needed a path to another world. The hero, smiling mysteriously, suggested that he guess for himself. The next day he returned to the guild, having received a reward for another order. A week passed, and he had saved up enough money. During this time, he became close to Lyle and his comrades, who invited him for a drink, but Siren declined, citing business. While wandering around the city, he gathered information about Elben Kelleth. 10 years ago, he was the king's advisor, but he retired, moving to the western border, near the hot spot where battles with the Demon King's army are taking place. Having decided that there was no longer any reason to stay in the city, the hero decided to visit the sage. A month has passed since the commander of the 8th Detachment of Holy Knights, named Heinrich, took over the care of the hero candidates in the temple city of Alpha, instead of the late Leonora. He asked if they had any complaints. Mido Shuji assured them that everyone considered him kind and responsive. Heinrich, satisfied, noted that each candidate was a valuable fighting unit, and he sought to show them the respect they deserved. Hashimoto thanked him for his efforts, mentally comparing him to Leonora, and finding the difference in attitude suspicious. Henry got down to the main point. At yesterday's meeting, they decided that it was time for the candidates to prove themselves in action. They are sent to the front lines along the western border, where fierce battles are taking place with the Demon King's army, in one of the hot spots. Mido Shuji, having clarified what they were talking about, reminded him of their agreement. Heinrich, realizing that he meant protecting those who did not have combat skills, assured him that this had not been forgotten and asked him not to worry. The candidates expressed their gratitude. The commander added that other work had been prepared for the non-combat members of the group, since there were not enough resources to support the idlers. Mido, remembering those who could not fight, thought that they would be glad of such an opportunity. Hashimoto asked when to move out. Henry replied that there was little time and that the detachment should be ready by tomorrow morning, asking that he tell the others to begin gathering. Hashimoto was satisfied with the fulfillment of their conditions. Mido Shuji felt uneasy at how smoothly everything was going. After Leonora's death, the knights had no trump cards to control the candidates, and her murder caused them fear. Hashimoto wondered where their classmate had gone after he killed the saint and disappeared. When the candidates reported Leonora's death, they immediately named Shinju Kai as the killer, admitting that he was one of them. The knights, interrogating him, asked where he had fled. The candidates responded that the traitor fled the scene of the crime. He had no other choice. The knights decided to organize a search party, but first to check whether the saint was really dead. One of the elders expressed doubt, wondering how they had let him go and calling their story too convenient. Arasi, getting angry, attacked the old man with accusations. He, defending himself, explained that he did not want to suspect them, but did not rule out a conspiracy in which they themselves killed Leonora. The knight intervened, reporting that he alone witnessed the candidates desperately trying to protect the saint, but were unable to stop Shinjo Kai, and she died at his hands. The witnesses insisted on the truth of their words, and the bishop, trusting him, found them innocent. Surprised by Shinjo's strength, he asked how dangerous he was. Candidates have confirmed that he is incredibly strong and secretive, never revealing his abilities. The bishop suggested that they discuss the details in a closed room and invited them to follow him. Kanzaki Rin, standing behind the pillar, eavesdropped on the entire conversation by discreetly using control, which worked flawlessly. Mido Shuji thanked her for her help, admitting that they couldn't have done it without her. He asked Hashimoto if she was worried about Shinjo. She waved it off and said that the traitor was not worth worrying about. Mido, blaming himself for what happened, believed that he had failed to protect the class by allowing his comrade to become a traitor. Having gathered the candidates, he announced the decision to send them to the front lines. The battle group had to prepare. Everyone was overcome with fear, but Nagasho Reina reminded them that it was too late to be afraid. They had chosen the path of fighters themselves. One of the girls asked if they were really being sent alone. Mido explained that they would be joining the 8th Squad of Knights under Heinrich's command. Kanzaki Rin inquired about the fate of Shinju Kai. She was informed that a reward had been placed on his head, and all resources had been thrown into the search, but so far to no avail. Her classmates were surprised by her concern about the traitor. Nagasho Reina, burning with anger, vowed to burn him if she found him. Rin, hiding her sadness, mentally admitted that she missed her partner and would like to go with him. One of the hero candidates, exhausted by the long march, began to loudly complain of fatigue and ask when there would be a rest stop. Hashimoto, holding back her irritation, reminded them that they had recently stopped for lunch and now they had to walk until nightfall. The last few days they had done nothing but walk, and their fatigue was growing. Suddenly, Arashi ordered everyone to stop, noticing monsters in the bushes. The commander of the knights, who accompanied the detachment, discontentedly reproached the candidates for stopping, reminding them that this was prohibited without permission. He looked around, seeing no enemies, and doubted their words. Arashi, blazing with anger, grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off the ground, and contemptuously said that he did not intend to listen to small fry. At that moment, monsters, kobolds with huge claws, jumped out of the bushes. The knights, startled by their appearance, prepared for battle, but one of them, taken by surprise, froze in fear as the kobold rushed at him. Arashi immediately intervened and used an explosive technique, incinerating the attackers. The rescued knight, having come to his senses, thanked him, but the bully rudely ordered him not to interfere and to get out. Continuing the fight, he fought off the kobolds, burning their bodies with explosions. His comrades, delighted, noted that his attacks had become even more powerful. However, Arashi himself, breathing heavily, considered his strength insufficient to achieve his goal of getting even with Shinjo Kai. The moment when he shot Leonora in cold blood came back to him. Cursing the traitor, he recalled how from the very beginning he seemed strange, always indifferent, not even flinching under his gaze. When Arashi received the power of the explosion, he was happy, thinking that he had surpassed Shinju, but now he doubted it. Mido Shuji, noticing his comrade's gloomy mood, asked what was happening to him. Arashi waved it off and said everything was fine, but admitted that it irritated him when little things told him what to do. The detachment finally reached the western border of the sacred country of Digrest and stopped at Fort Traz. They were greeted by Amelia, the commander of the 4th Squad of Holy Knights, who thanked the candidates for coming. After introducing herself, she explained that the western border was her area of responsibility, and that she had recently become a front commander. Heinrich, surprised, asked what had happened to the former commander, Banken. Amelia, looking gloomy, reported that he had died a week ago. Wanting to offer the squad a rest after a long journey, she did not have time to finish. As a knight burst into the room with news of the Demon King's army attack, he called for everyone to take up positions immediately. The vacation was postponed, and Amelia expressed hope for help from the candidates. Mido Shuji, on behalf of the team, assured that they would obey her orders and told everyone to prepare for battle. Arashi clenched his fist and noted with grim joy that this was exactly what he needed. The Demon King's army has begun its assault on Fort Tracy. Alarm signals were heard from all sides, and the defenders hastily took up positions. Henry, the commander of the 8th Company of Holy Knights, gave the order to open fire on the approaching enemies in order to reduce their numbers before they reached the walls. The fire mages clenched their palms, cast spells, and fired flaming projectiles. The demons slowed as they passed through the flames, but they did not stop advancing. Their purposefulness left no doubt. They came to destroy. Mido Shuji watched the scene, amazed at how stubbornly the enemy did not retreat even under a barrage of spells. Amelia, the commander of the 4th Squad, noted that such attacks were useless. According to her, demons were resilient and much stronger than humans, and normal tactics did not work against them. Mido was at a loss. Under such pressure, it was unclear what to do. Amelia ordered him and his squad to obey Henry, while she and her fighters took up lower positions. Henry confirmed his readiness, and then, looking at one of the impatient candidates, he smiled slightly, pointing at him. Arashi didn't wait for the command, and was the first to rush into the attack, activating the explosion technique. The demons froze for a moment from his onslaught. He shouted that he didn't care who he fought, and called his enemies closer, hoping for a fight. Mido, seeing this, did not want to lag behind. He activated the sword, surrounded by radiance, and went into battle. Using the extension skill, he increased the length of the blade and struck down multiple enemies with one swing. Feeling his power growing, he wanted to show others that demons could be stopped. His confidence gave the team determination, and the candidates moved forward. Mido realized that if he hesitated, it affected others. Hashimoto supported him, assuring him that they were nearby, and used telekinesis, directing the stones at the demons. Nagasho Rina concentrated her energy and created waves of fire, burning the attackers. Kanzaki Rin used a control technique, temporarily immobilizing the monsters, allowing others to finish them off. The knights, watching the battle, were impressed. Henry approved of the candidates' actions and urged them to continue the offensive, promising that they would be able to push back the enemy. Raising his sword, he led the squad forward. Hours later, the battlefield was littered with demon bodies. The Demon King's army retreated, and the fort's defenders achieved a major victory. When the fight was over, Heinrich approached Mido Shuji and asked him how he felt about his first fight. Mido admitted that there was still a lot to learn, and that coordinating a squad and fighting against a large group required experience. Henry praised him, adding that without him the battle could have ended differently, but reminded him that these were not the strongest enemies. Greater demons possess dangerous powers. Mido nodded, promising to take that into consideration. In the demon lair, the commanders, with their heads down, reported their defeat to the Demon King. They admitted their mistake. The Overlord, dissatisfied with the result, listened to them in silence. One of the four heavenly kings, the commander of the army, known as the Earth King of Stongai, did not hide his cold rage. The protagonist made his way through the echo of the great forest in the west of the sacred country of Digrest, feeling that the exit from the thicket was near. This means that the home of the great sage Elben Keleth is nearby. Suddenly there was a sharp sound behind him, and long tongues flew past, almost hitting him. Turning around, he saw monkeys with unusually long tongues. Using the appraisal skill, he found out that they were gibbons, B-tier monsters. Confident in his abilities, he grabbed the knife and assumed a fighting stance. The monsters' tongues reached out to him, but he deftly dodged, repelling the attacks. Noticing their slowness, he realized that victory would be easy. With a precise blow to the head, he killed one gibbon. The rest, seeing the death of their relative, froze. Shinjo Kai, wondering mockingly if he himself would have to approach them, noticed how the monkeys ran away in panic. The monsters were becoming more dangerous with each passing day, and he attributed this to their proximity to the Demon King's lands. In this wilderness, where there were no cities or adventurers, only the strongest individuals survived. There were no hunters nearby who could handle such creatures. Judging by the assessment, most of the monsters were adults and experienced. Deciding to remain cautious, he headed towards the Orcano Mountains, a natural barrier protecting Digrest from the invasion of the Demon King's army. The highest peak, Death Wolf Mountain, was rumored to be the home of a sage. There was supposed to be a village at the foot of the mountain. As he moved forward, he noticed smoke, and to his horror, he saw a destroyed city. Could it be that the Demon King's army had reached here? The front line was far away, and he clearly underestimated the enemy. Running through the streets, he saw the bodies of dead residents. Having climbed onto the roof, he began to observe the demons. One of them turned to his commander, named Hector, asking what to do next. He suggested killing everyone, but their leader decided to keep the survivors as slaves. He ordered his subordinate to report what he had learned about Elban. The demon reported that the sage lived on the top of Death Wolf Mountain, confirming the information received. Hector, satisfied, announced that the priority target was to capture Elben Keleth, known as the Sage. They will make camp and set out at dawn. The subordinates, worried, reminded him of the deadly wolfen wolves that inhabited the mountain. They cannot be subdued because magic does not work on them, and their intelligence is too high. Hector, admitting his weakness in magic, waved it off. If submission was impossible, they would kill all the wolves and continue on their way. The demons, inspired, agreed. Shinju Kai, having assessed the enemies, realized that they belonged to the elite of the Demon King's army. Their leader, Hector, was a B rank, and according to rumors, there were only 10 high demons in the army. A head-on attack would be suicide. Suddenly, Hector, feeling someone's gaze, looked up at the roof and noticed a man. He ordered a search of the area, confident that it was a spy. The hero instantly disappeared, mentally praising the commander for his observation. Stealth was his strong point, and he was confident that he would not be found. As he fled, he looked for a safe place to hide, but came across people in chains, surrounded by demons. The inhabitants were crying while being held captive. Shinjo, exhaling, decided to leave. He felt sorry for the villagers, but there was no point in playing the savior. His goal was the same as the demons, to find the sage, which meant he had to get ahead of them and climb Death Wolf Mountain first. Shinjo Kai made his way through the highest and most dangerous peak of the Urkano Mountains, known as Death Wolf Mountain. There were no beaten paths here, and he had to make his way along the tracks of animals. Visibility was reduced by the loose, slippery soil, forcing us to move slowly and carefully, despite the desire to speed up. Suddenly he caught a rustling sound, barely having time to notice the movement. Deadly wolfen wolves appeared before him. He counted 3 and tensed, realizing there could be more. There were almost no traces left. The animals had complete control of the area. Suddenly, the wolves attacked from all sides with a roar. There were at least 10 of them. The hero, fighting back, jumped onto a tree, dodging their claws. Now it is clear why the mountain had such an ominous name, and why most of the daredevils who risked climbing it never returned. Using evaluation, Shinju found out that the wolves were sea level, but their strength was astounding. One of them easily broke the tree he was hiding in. As he fell, the hero grabbed the sheet, instantly creating a plan. Strengthening his body with miraculous power, he swung and threw the leaf, which, becoming sharp as a blade, cut the wolf in half. By concentrating a powerful aura around himself, he created a barrier that would injure anyone who dared to approach. The wolves, rushing at him, fell dead, unable to withstand his protection. Shinjo, amazed by the result, remembered Leonora's words. Hero candidates rely on blessings. But they were nothing compared to her miraculous power, which allowed her to control their minds through the technique of enslavement. Now he realized that the weakness of blessings could be compensated for by training the miraculous power. By mastering it, he could improve his physical abilities and resist magical attacks. It wasn't as impressive as the blessings, but it opened the door to power-ups, and the time spent practicing would pay off. Fighting off the wolves, he reached the leader of the pack, a huge beast that rushed at him with its mouth open. With one swing of the knife, the hero cut off his head. The remaining wolves, having lost their leader, retreated. Shinjo, having called them problematic, decided that they were ideal for training. Soon he noticed new monsters moving strangely, a shadow appearing in front of each one, predicting their next action. This new skill, weak point display, allowed one to see attacks a second ahead. Clutching the dagger, he began to hone his skills with delight, destroying all the wolves in his path. After analyzing himself, he found that his physical strength had reached B level, and his ability to display weaknesses had developed thanks to the improvement of evaluation. The fight had exhausted him, and seeing the summit was near, he decided to take a rest. But a powerful roar interrupted his plans. The Demon King's army was already nearby. There is no time left for rest. As he ran towards the top of Death Wolf Mountain, he caught snatches of the demon's conversation. General Hector discussed plans with his subordinates, calling a certain elf, a student of a sage, surprisingly tenacious. These words angered the girl, but the demons decided to finish her off. Hector raised his hand and gave the order to kill her. The elf, who called herself the sage's student, challenged the demons that they would not be able to defeat her at this rate. Suddenly, she felt her body being grabbed by someone's hands. It was Shinjo Kai, who managed to catch her as she fell. She froze, stunned by the appearance of a man. The demons, noticing him, assumed that reinforcements had arrived. The hero quickly assessed the situation and counted 10 soldiers of the Demon King's army and one higher demon, their commander Hector. The elf asked why he saved her. Shinju, using appraisal and finding out that she was a half-elf with magical skills, replied that he saved her as a disciple of the sage Elben, with whom he had business. Hector, not hiding his contempt, declared that all people were their enemies and ordered the demons to kill both of them. Shinjo, realizing that saving the elf could win the sage's favor, decided to fight to the last. By activating the foresight skill, he easily dodged attacks by anticipating his opponent's movements. Noticing a mace in the clutches of one of the demons, he mentally noted that using such a weapon against people was overkill. Swinging his sword, he cut off the limbs of most of the soldiers. The remaining demons, amazed by his skill, froze. Shinju, satisfied, realized that with foresight in close combat, he was invincible. The only question was how long the skill would remain effective, and how many minutes he had left. Hector, realizing the threat, forbade his subordinates to approach and ordered them to attack with magic. Seals emitting magical energy appeared in their hands. They activated a magic field spell, bringing down a barrage of projectiles on the hero. Shinjo, surprised by their technique, prepared to dodge, but the elf intervened. Using arcane elven magic, she summoned the spirit of air, Sylph, who dispelled the magical attacks and redirected them back. She explained that her magic borrowed the power of spirits, and thanks to Sylph, her powers were restored. Hector, seeing that magic could not defeat them, decided to personally enter the battle. Shinjo, anticipating a fight with a higher demon, turned to the elf, offering her to deal with the soldiers while he dealt with their commander. She agreed, but, irritated, asked not to call her elf. Her name is Maya. The hero nodded, expressed his trust in the sage's student, and rushed into battle. The battle with Hector turned out to be more difficult. The demon confidently wielded a huge sword, and even with Shinjo's foresight, he barely managed to dodge. At one point, Hector touched him, and blood began to flow from the hero's side. The demon, surprised by his tenacity, noted that even if he were not human, he would still have a chance. Shinju gritted his teeth and used appraisal. Hector's physical abilities were astounding. His high reflexes and level 5 swordsmanship made a frontal attack too risky, even with foresight. Deciding to resort to cunning, the hero began to develop a plan to outwit the greater demon. Hector, the general of the Demon King's army, roared furiously as he ordered Shinju Kai not to stand there and rushed towards him with his sword. The hero, relying on foresight, dodged the swift attacks, but his body could not keep up with the reaction, and the demon's blade still touched him, leaving bleeding wounds. Shinju gritted his teeth, realizing that foresight was useless if one's physical form couldn't match the enemy's speed. The gap in their strength seemed insurmountable. Hector mockingly asked if he really planned to run away from him forever. In response, the hero pulled out a pistol and fired several times. The demon, not expecting this, managed to defend himself from the bullets, but the attack still caught him by surprise. Astonished, he called the weapon a new invention of the Templars, and, calling Shinjo an impudent boy, rushed forward with redoubled fury. Shinjo continued to shoot, but Hector, having gotten the hang of it, predicted the trajectory of the bullets and dodged. When the ammo ran out, the hero switched to throwing knives, but the demon easily deflected them. In desperation, Shinjo decided to use the last trump card from his world, a grenade. Throwing it at Hector's feet, he caused a powerful explosion that enveloped the battlefield in smoke. Maya, fighting off the rank-and-file demons, watched the battle, amazed. A person capable of fighting on equal terms with a higher demon was a mystery to her. Shinjo, breathing heavily, realized that he had exhausted his arsenal. The ammunition was gone. The grenade was the last one. The explosion did not destroy Hector, but only angered him. The demon, with a demonic laugh, called the weapon strange and rushed to attack again. The hero, having gathered himself, activated the concentration technique, strengthening his movements, and turned on the skill of displaying weak points. A line appeared in his eyes, indicating the enemy's vulnerable spot, the throat. Grabbing the knife, he rushed forward, putting all his strength into the blow. The blade pierced Hector's neck, and the greater demon, with a wheeze, fell dead. Shinjo, exhausted, realized that the combination of foresight and weak point mapping had been incredibly effective, but the strain on his body was enormous. Exhausted, he could barely stand on his feet. The remaining demons, shocked by the death of their commander, noticed his weakness and decided that they could finish him off. Maya, realizing that her spirits were at their limit and she would not be able to hold back all the enemies, still decided to protect the man who saved her. As the demons rushed forward, she summoned the fire spirit salamander, causing flames to engulf the soldiers. Their screams rent the air, and Shinjo turned around to note that Maya's fire was much more powerful than Nagasho Reina's. At that moment, another figure approached the elf. Another elf, apologizing for being late. She introduced herself as Maya's mentor, and Shinjo, shocked, realized that before him was the sage Elban Keleth himself. The mentor, approaching the hero, thanked him, noting that he had saved her student, and expressed her willingness to listen to his request. Shinju Kai, still catching his breath after the fight, asked the elf if she really was the sage Elban Keleth. She, with a slight smile, confirmed, but called herself more of a pile of old bones, retired. The hero, without being able to use assessment, still felt its power. Even in its current state, it was far beyond his capabilities. Deciding that honesty was the best strategy, he made no secret of his intentions. The sage, possessing a keen intuition, immediately realized that he needed something. She noted that he would not have made such a dangerous journey without a reason, and, being indebted for saving her student Maya, promised to help if it was in her power. Maya, interrupting the conversation, suggested that they first get to their house, since the place was soaked in blood and would soon attract the Wolfen. Elban agreed, inviting Shinjo to follow them, noting that he could use some rest. The hero, having expressed his gratitude, mentally noted that the risk to save Maya had paid off. The sage was disposed towards him. They came to a modest elven house, where Maya, having invited the guest to feel at home, went to wash herself. Shinjo, remaining with Elban, asked why they had settled in such an inaccessible place. The sage explained that she was tired of worldly cares. Even after leaving her post as the king's advisor, she continued to be sought by those who wanted to use her knowledge for their own purposes. Shinjo nodded understandingly, and noted that only those like him, rare and talented, could get here. Elban, smiling, replied that she did not consider herself a monster, and was glad to accept those who would conquer the mountain. Getting down to business, she asked again about his purpose. The hero admitted that he was looking for a way to return to his home world. Elban immediately realized that he was from another world, summoned as a hero candidate to fight the Demon King. She clarified that he was from the third generation of summoned, rumors of which even reached her. Shinjo, surprised, remembered Leonora's words about the previous summons. Elban said that the second conscription took place 5 years ago, and the first one 10 years ago. Both generations were defeated by the Demon King's army. The calls were supposed to be taboo, but Leonora insisted on a third attempt. The sage was against it from the very beginning, considering it dubious to entrust the fate of the country to strangers, regardless of the will of God. Shinjo, agreeing, revealed that this was why he killed Leonora, to prevent further summonings. Elban, shocked, did not expect that the saint would fall at the hands of her own pawn. Calling it karma, she considered his desire to return home natural. Getting to the point, she admitted that her magic was not capable of sending him back. Shinjo lowered his head and asked if there were other ways. The sage explained that the summoning technique existed, but the reverse ritual had long been lost, as no one cared about the return of the heroes. Leonora, she said the same thing. The only obvious way is to defeat the Demon King, or find something suitable among the demonic techniques. The hero, after thinking, decided that the demons would be his next target. Elban, apologizing for the lack of information, reminded her of her duty to save Maya and promised to look for solutions. She added that she believed in his potential to defeat the Demon King. Shinjo waved it off, calling it too much trouble, but agreed that if there was no other way out, he would kill the king. As she listened, she felt a cold emptiness in his words that made him stand out even among the other candidates. The hero thanked the sage, asking him to convey any news through the Adventurers Guild to Siren. Elban wondered thoughtfully whether she could trust him. Maya, coming out of the shower, offered Shinjo to wash herself, noting that the battle and the climb up the mountain had not made him any cleaner. He agreed, but the sage suddenly offered to take Maya with him on the journey. The student, stunned, did not expect this. Elban explained that Maya would help him achieve his goal faster. Shinjo, refusing, stated that he did not intend to drag such a noisy companion along with him. Shinju Kai and the elf Maya advanced through the eastern region of the demon kingdom of Walrod, along the front line with the sacred kingdom of Digrest. The weather was clear, despite rumors about the harsh climate of these lands. Maya, interrupting his thoughts, explained that these territories previously belonged to Digrest, but the deeper they penetrate into the lands of the Demon King, the harsher the climate will become. The demon army occupied the region, and on the western slope of the Urkano Mountains, there was a large city called Neutrat. Once upon a time, villages flourished around it, but now the city served as a base for the demon troops, which was where they were heading, planning to get there in 2 days. Shinjo, anticipating the answer, asked what happened to the people of Neutrath. Maya, looking gloomy, said that half were killed, half were turned into slaves, and some managed to escape through the mountains. The hero mentally noted that it was not in vain that he agreed to take the elf. Her knowledge was invaluable. Remembering the moment when he refused her company, he thought of the words of the sage Elban. Then she reassured him, convincing him that Maya, with her vast knowledge, would be a useful companion for a newcomer to this world. Shinjo asked Elban what benefit Maya would gain from traveling with him. The sage explained that her student, although erudite, had almost no practical experience, drawing knowledge from books. Elban had long wanted to send her on a journey, but was too worried to let her go alone. Shinjo's appearance, having saved Maya, was the perfect opportunity. The hero, skeptically noting that she could babysit the student herself, heard in response that Elban's strength was already running out. Despite her young appearance, Shinjo, warning that their path to the demon kingdom was dangerous, said that he would abandon Maya if she became a burden. Elban, turning to the student, gave her a choice. Maya, after thinking about it, agreed to go with him. After several hours of travel, the elf, exhausted, complained of fatigue. They had only been walking for a day, but she justified herself by reminding him that she was a mage, not a swordsman, and was trying to be resilient. Shinjo, throwing down his bags, announced a halt, noting that he would have abandoned her immediately if he had intended to. He told her to pitch a tent, and after making a fire, they warmed themselves and ate. The hero, looking at his companion, asked why she was risking her life on such a dangerous journey if his goal was to return home, and she had no such reasons. He suspected that Elban was not telling him something. Maya sighed and admitted that he saw right through her. She told about her past. Her elven village was destroyed by the Demon King's army. They fought with people, but the demons did not spare anyone. Her parents and younger brother died, and she survived only because her father distracted the enemies. Left alone, she almost died in the forest, until Elban found her and took her as an apprentice. Shinjo interrupted to clarify that he was not interested in the past, but in her goal. Maya, surprised by his directness, explained that she had become a magician and had agreed to the journey to gain the power to destroy demons. For 10 years she trained under Elban to avenge her family. Shinjo asked if she knew the name of the culprit. Maya named Winberg, one of the 4 heavenly kings, the Wind King, and the commander-in-chief of the Demon King's army. She went with him, hoping to find a trace of this demon. The hero, noting that he had no reason to fight the heavenly kings, thought about it. Maya added that Elban did not let her go for a long time, but trusted Shinjo, seeing something special in him. She did not know why the mentor decided so, but she was sure that he had his own opinion. Shinjo, remembering Elban's words about trust, thought that without his accompaniment, Maya would have died in search of revenge. The elf, apologizing for the difficult conversation, assured him that she would not drag him into her problems and would handle it herself. The hero, thanking for his frankness, suggested ending the conversation and going to bed, since he had to get up early in the morning. Maya summoned spirits to guard her and warn her about the monsters. Shinjo thought about the 4 heavenly kings, who were clearly superior to Hector, whom he had fought. He needs to get stronger, but there is no reason to worry yet. On the western border of the sacred kingdom of Digrest, near Fort Tracy, the hero candidates gathered around a table to discuss their next steps. The commanders advised moving from defense to offense. Amelia intervened and offered to return Fort Eris, which originally belonged to Digrest. She emphasized its strategic importance. Capturing Eris would force the demons to retreat. Henry, however, objected, considering the operation too risky. Until now, they had only been on the defensive, and a sudden attack could end in failure. One of the knights, disagreeing, teased him, asking if the captain of the 8th Detachment, under whose command the hero candidates were, was really afraid. Amelia, supporting Henry, noted that the enemy had probably let their guard down, not expecting an attack, which gave them an advantage. Turning to Mido Shuji, she asked if they were ready. The leader nodded, confirming that they would immediately engage in battle upon order. Leaving the office, Henry, worried about Amelia's haste, announced that the operation would begin tomorrow. Hashimoto, noticing the commander's confidence, asked if everything would be okay. Henry, agreeing, acknowledged that an attack now, while the enemy was recovering, was logical, but expressed concern that the knights were relying too much on the strength of the candidates, seeing them as the main striking force. As outsiders, they could not object to their superiors, and they had no choice. He assured them that the 8th Squad would provide all possible support, but the main burden would fall on the candidates, and advised them to get a good rest before the battle. Mido Shuji, feeling anxious, did not understand how they had come to this, but he knew that there was nowhere to retreat. At dawn, the detachment set out for Fort Eris. Nagasho Rina, surprised by the timing, asked why they didn't attack at night, since it would be better for surprise. Henry explained that demons had excellent night vision, and in the dark they would have an advantage. Mido Shuji, having gathered the team, once again repeated the plan. Their goal is to eliminate the local leader, probably a higher demon. While the main forces distract the enemy, they will get inside and eliminate the leader. The candidates nodded and confirmed their readiness. The knight reported to Henry that the main detachment had transmitted the signal to begin the operation. The captain nodded and ordered them to proceed. The squad rushed forward, and the demons instantly responded by joining the battle. Knights wielding swords fought on the approaches to the fort, while the Demon King watched the battle from the castle. Meanwhile, Mido Shuji's team had penetrated the fortress. Having come across a group of monsters, they tried to interrogate them, but the leader, without wasting time, easily dealt with the enemies, cutting off their limbs. The candidates, impressed by his skill, felt confident knowing that he could be relied upon. Henry, however, warned them not to let their guard down. Their main enemy was probably waiting in the next room. As they moved forward, they encountered a barricade of demons. Turning around, they noticed another group of enemies surrounding them from behind. It was an ambush. The candidates, panicked, asked the leader what to do. Henry, keeping his cool, announced that the 8th Detachment would cover the rear, and the heroes should break through forward. Nagasho Rina didn't hesitate to rush in, using fire skills to clear the way. Together they destroyed the demons, clearing the way to the massive gates. Having ordered them to be opened, they went inside. Before them appeared a demon who called himself Stongai, the Earth King, one of the 4 heavenly kings of the Demon King's army. A terrifying pressure emanated from him, causing Mido Shuji to tense up. Stongai, looking at them with disdain, invited the candidates to show what they were capable of. Mido, calling on his team to be ready, mentally convinced himself not to give in to fear. Defeat would mean the death of the entire operation. Clutching his sword, he prepared to lead the squad forward. realizing that there was no retreat. Mido Shuji, focused on Stongai, did not notice the swift attack. A wave of stones crashed down on him, burying him underneath. The comrades gasped when they saw the leader fall, but he climbed out and assured them that he was fine, although his face showed pain. At this moment, Arashi, taking advantage of the distraction, snuck up on the Earth King from behind. Thanking Mido for the opportunity, he used an explosion technique, aiming at the demon. Stongai, however, instantly erected an earthen shield, completely protecting himself from the attack. The earth, obeying his will, suddenly turned against Arashi, digging into his stomach. The king, looking at the candidate with disdain, asked if this was all they could do. Without giving them time to recover, Stongai summoned massive golems from the ground, which, obeying his command, moved towards the heroes. Mido Shuji, shaking off his stupor, took command and ordered them not to get close. Narumi responded by activating the skill Wind Cutter, cutting off the limbs of the clay creatures. Arashi, using explosions, blew the golems to pieces. But, noticing their slowness, he wondered in bewilderment what the point was in such weak opponents. Stongai, irritated by his mockery, showed his true strength, and new golems began to form from the fragments of the destroyed ones, regenerating before his eyes. Arashi, realizing the problem, realized that the fight would be more difficult than expected. The candidates continued to destroy the golems one after another, but they were constantly recreated. Kanzaki Rin, deciding to intervene, used the control technique, ordering the golems to freeze. While they stood motionless, the other heroes struck. Hashimoto, using telekinesis, lifted stones and brought them down on the enemies. But the golems, despite the destruction, were restored without a single scratch. Narumi, remembering the plot from the manga, suggested that in such cases it is necessary to defeat the magician who created the creatures. He suggested distracting the golems so that the others could focus on Stongai. Mido nodded and rushed towards the demon, cutting a path through the enemies. Stongai, noticing him, said with a grin that they underestimated him. He dropped to his knees and struck the ground, creating a magical seal. A stream of energy erupted from it, forming stone projectiles that rushed towards Mido Shuji. The leader, feeling the air thicken with the power of the attack, prepared for the collision, realizing that there was no retreat. Shinju Kai and Maya infiltrated the city of Neutrath, which had been captured by the Demon King's army, by making their way through the sewers. The elf admitted that she would not have thought of using such a path, despite the disgusting smell. The hero told them to be patient. The demons wouldn't notice them under the city, because they could see perfectly well in the dark, and around Neutrat there was an open field where it was impossible to pass unnoticed. In addition, border towns are usually heavily guarded. Finding a ladder, they climbed to the surface, finding themselves on a dark street. Hearing footsteps, they quickly hid. Demons passed by, talking to each other. One complained of boredom. The other tried to calm him down by mentioning that they served in the guard of the witch lady, a rare fortune. But they both agreed that her talent was marred by her bad behavior, and decided to keep quiet as they walked away. Maya, having made sure that the threat had passed, whispered that they were talking about the princess who ruled the city, known as the Witch of the Void. Shinjo, remembering the words of the sage Elban, realized that this was the one he was looking for. A demon who could control space, who could perhaps help him return home. The question was how to make contact without provoking a fight. Maya asked what he would do. The hero decided to gather information first, and told her to follow his instructions without doing anything extra. She agreed. Having made their way into an abandoned building, they watched the city from under the window. Maya, disappointed, noticed that the demons were living ordinary lives. Shinjo explained that their intelligence allows them to adopt human habits and understand speech. At that moment, the demon, noticing the slave, rudely shouted at him, demanding that he work faster. Maya, shocked by the cruelty, could not contain her surprise. The hero, reminding her that she knew about slavery, told her not to get distracted. Suddenly, a stranger's voice was heard from behind, asking if they were demons. Shinjo, engrossed in watching, cursed himself for his inattention. How did he not notice her presence? The stranger calmed him down and assured him that she was not looking for a fight. The hero, alert, asked about her intentions and how she found them. She explained that she sensed outsiders breaking through her barrier and tracked them down. Maya, shocked, did not feel any spells, which made her even more wary. The stranger clarified that her spatial technology was impossible to detect. Shinju, using appraisal, found out that the person in front of him was Isabel, an S-class demon. She introduced herself as the fifth princess of the demon kingdom of Walrod, and threatened to call the guards if they did not explain what the human and elf were doing in Neutrath. She added that they do not look like spies. Shinjo, realizing that they would not survive a fight with an S level, decided to continue the dialogue. He began to tell his story, but Isabel interrupted him and suggested that they sit down. She was bored and ready to listen. Surprised by his desire to return to his homeworld, she asked if spatial technology could really help. The hero confirmed, referring to the words of the sage. Isabel, to his amazement, stated that he had been misled. She was able to send him to another world, but for this, she needed the coordinates of his original world. Without them, the spell, although simple, is useless. Shinju, stunned by the ease of communication with the Void Witch, noted that, unlike other demons, she does not show hatred towards humans. Isabel shrugged and waited for his answer. But the hero, thinking, realized that the coordinates of his world were unknown to him. Shinju Kai, stunned by Isabel's words about the coordinates, asked how to find them. The demoness explained that there are countless worlds, and finding a specific one is an almost impossible task. The hero, using the skill Truth Assessment, an improvement obtained by increasing the level of assessment, was convinced that she was not lying. Isabel added that his body could serve as a navigator, but the blessing of the Creator God, placed on him as a candidate for a hero, blocks such a possibility. Her spatial technique is unable to penetrate the divine protection. Shinju frowned and asked if that meant the only way was to follow God's will and kill the Demon King. Isabel sighed and replied that she couldn't say for sure, but she didn't see any other options. The hero, thinking, realized that there was no simple solution. Having made up his mind, he declared that in that case he would kill the Demon King, and that would be the end of it. His wish to return home with the help of magic proved unfulfilled, and there was no easy way in sight. Maya, noticing his gloomy mood, suspected something was wrong. She asked Isabel why she was so willing to help, being a demon princess. The demoness, with a slight smile, replied that the demon kingdom was not eternal, and that she had her own interests. Opening the portal, she stepped into it, finally advising him to take care of himself, as escaping from Neutrath would not be easy. With these words, she disappeared. Maya, trembling, admitted that she was scared, thinking that the end was waiting for them. Shinju, surprised, noted that Isabel, the Demon King's daughter, was incredibly strong, and fighting her would be suicide, but her help was unexpected. He added that such luck usually comes at a price. At that moment, they looked out the window and saw demons screaming in panic about human scouts who had entered the city. The hero realized that they were discovered immediately after Isabel left. Could it be that she gave them away? But why did she leave then? Maya was confused, but Shinjo waved her off and said that trying to understand her motives was useless. They needed to escape urgently. They raced across the rooftops, dodging the gaze of the demons who, confident in their presence, were combing the city. Shinjo, using appraisal from a distance, was unable to discern who gave the order, but he sensed a growing threat. Suddenly he froze, crouching, and ordered Maya not to move. He felt a magical power comparable to Isabel's, and perhaps even superior to hers. It was Winberg. Maya, trembling, could not believe that he was here. She confirmed that it was the one she had sworn revenge on. Winberg, the Wind King, one of the 4 heavenly kings. Shinju, using appraisal, saw that the demon was an A rank and acknowledged its strength. Having calmed the elf, he reminded her that now was not the time for battle. The hero turned around and whispered that the wind technique allowed them to detect enemies by air vibrations, and they needed to move extremely carefully. Overhearing Winberg's conversation with the demons, they learned that he doubted the presence of spies, but his subordinates confirmed their infiltration. Winberg interrupted them and said that he already knew the answer. If people were here, they would be destroyed. He mentioned that there were potential heroes on the front lines, and the demons couldn't afford to have weakness in the rear. One of his subordinates asked if Winberg was sure he wanted to stay in the rear, since his skills would be more useful on the front lines. The Wind King replied that this place was perfect for his abilities, and let others take the risk. Using wind magic, he sensed the presence of the strangers, chuckling as the air currents betrayed their cautious movements. No one can hide from its searching wind, which can detect people or objects by the slightest vibrations. The demons, delighted, acknowledged the complexity of the wind technique. Winberg, pleased, ordered a search party to be prepared, noting that the people hidden by the witch promised him entertainment. Shinjo gritted his teeth as he realized that their situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. Winberg was not only strong, but also incredibly attentive. Maya, clenching her fists, muttered that she would not miss the chance to take revenge, but the hero, silencing her with a look, began to look for a way to retreat. Realizing that a clash with the King of Wind was now mortally dangerous, Shinjukai quickly realized that the demons had caught on to their direction of movement, although their exact location remained a mystery to them. The wind currents began to move unnaturally, and even Maya's spirits, according to her, sensed something was wrong. Winberg's wind attribute-based search technique posed a serious threat. The elf suggested using magic to disrupt the search spell, but warned that it might give away their location. Deciding not to take any risks, they agreed to leave everything as is, so as not to get caught completely. Shinjo suggested hiding the tail and quickly running while the demons were distracted. They rushed forward but were still noticed. Maya, panicking, began to apologize, considering herself guilty. But the hero, keeping his cool, assured that the advantage was on their side. He announced that she would be bait and began to climb the walls to the roof. The elf, in shock, screamed that she couldn't climb so deftly. Shinjo, reminding her of her thirst for revenge, said that she would not be able to take revenge if she was not even able to escape from pursuit. These words touched Maya, and, driven by demons, she realized that she had to act. Summoning the fire spirit salamander, she channeled its power through her staff, creating a fiery vortex around herself. The demons stood stunned and froze, not understanding what was happening. The flames grew brighter, but unfortunately attracted the attention of other enemies. Shinjo, taking advantage of the confusion, jumped from the roof and began to quietly kill the demons by cutting off their limbs. One of the enemy leaders, hearing a strange sound, turned around and saw the bodies of his comrades. At that very moment, the knife was at his throat, and he fell dead. Maya, continuing to fight back, held back the onslaught of demons, but their number seemed endless. She didn't immediately notice that the enemies were disappearing one after another. Shinjo was sneaking up behind her and methodically destroying them. After finishing, he praised the elf, noting that she played the role of bait perfectly, allowing him to deal with the demons without any problems. Winberg, turning to his surviving subordinates, asked whether they had managed to catch the spies. They, hanging their heads, admitted their failure and suggested calling for reinforcements. The Wind King, irritated, waved it off. This would only increase the number of victims. He declared that he would personally deal with the little people and track them down with the help of his magic. Maya, feeling a new wave of wind mana, realized that Winberg was using the search technique again. In desperation, she summoned the wind spirit Sylph, hoping to break his spell. Shinju tensed up and muttered that it seemed like the Wind King was following them. Winberg, noticing their presence, grinned, realizing that he was dealing not with simple rats, but with serious invaders. Maya, seeing him, trembled with rage. Shinjo, having assessed the situation, asked if she was ready for revenge, since now she had a chance. The elf, clutching her staff, replied that she had been preparing for this moment for decades. Shinju Kai, assessing the situation, warned Maya that a protracted battle with Winberg, the Wind King, would lead to defeat. They must defeat him quickly, preferably with one blow. The elf nodded and summoned the wind spirit Sylph, preparing to attack. Winberg laughed and reminded them that he was one of the 4 heavenly kings, the master of the wind, and that their attempt to use the wind against him was either brave or insanely stupid. Concentrating a whirlwind around himself, he quickly approached. Noticing Shinjo trying to close the distance, he mockingly asked if the hero really thought that his searching wind wouldn't pick up the slightest movement. Shinjo exhaled, realizing that Winberg was the natural enemy of his killing techniques. The search wind compensated for any blind spots, making stealth useless. Maya, raising her staff, confidently declared that she could handle it. She explained that Winberg's search technique worked by manipulating the wind, but if she disrupted its flow with the Sylph, it would destroy the spell. Winberg, surprised by her knowledge, suspected something was wrong. How did the elf know the details of his fighting style? Shinjo, noticing her determination, realized that the thirst for revenge works wonders and decided to play along, getting closer to the demon. Winberg, noticing his maneuver, soared into the air, mocking, "Did the hero really think that he couldn't fly?" Shinjo, remembering Narumi's flying technique, realized that the situation was getting more complicated. Suddenly, he heard Maya's scream calling him to jump. Trusting her instincts, he activated his foresight and weak point mapping, rushing at the enemy with a knife. However, as he got closer, he noticed that the vulnerable spot on Winberg's body had disappeared. Before he could react, he barely avoided the counterattack. The demon, taking out a hilt from which a sharp blade grew, forced the hero to draw his sword. Winberg, recognizing his skill, remarked that it was he who taught Hector fencing. At that moment, a huge rock thrown by Maya flew past Shinjo, crashing into the wall. Winberg, surprised, noted that the elf had earth magic in her arsenal, which was unusual, and her tactics made the fight more difficult, since the wind couldn't knock the stones away. Suddenly, he remembered the destroyed elven village and realized that Maya was a survivor of that massacre. When he asked if they had really killed Hector, he received confirmation. Winberg chuckled and said he now knew what it was like to lose a loved one. Maya, blazing with anger, reminded him that 10 years had passed, and all this time she had been training to kill him. The demon yawned and called it empty nostalgia. He remembered how fun it was to watch the elves in despair, begging for mercy, and how they were consumed by hopelessness. Maya, beside herself with rage, was ready to pounce on him, but Shinjo stopped her, urging her not to succumb to provocations. "Her magic is needed for victory." "Calming down," she nodded. Shinjo, analyzing, realized that Winberg had both close-range and long-range attacks and had no weak points. Deciding to use provocation, he hoped to throw the demon off balance. Winberg, calling them a pushy duo, admitted he didn't expect such tenacity from the man. Having guessed Shinjo as a candidate for a hero, he noted that he knew all the dangerous people of Digrest, but he saw a hero for the first time. This meant that he, the new weapon of the Templars, confident in his superiority, the demon saw no reason to worry. Shinjo, knowing that the precognition would last for another 3 minutes, warned Maya that time was running out. If they didn't defeat Winberg quickly, they were finished. Asking the elf to borrow her ears, he began to outline his plan. But Maya interrupted him and said she had an idea. Shinjo Kai, after hearing Maya's idea, agreed, but reminded her of her own words so that she would not interfere. Winberg, mockingly asking if they had finished making plans, received an answer from the hero, who confidently declared that they were beginning. Maya, summoning the wind spirit Sylph, lifted her partner into the air while simultaneously using the earth spirit Gnome. She picked up several rocks and aimed them at Winberg, aiming to knock him down. The Wind King, floating in the air, created a wind shield in an attempt to reflect the projectiles. But Shinjo, taking advantage of the moment, closed the distance and entered into close combat. Maya, without stopping, announced that this was not all, and launched new stones from behind. Winberg, amazed by her control, had not expected such precision. Trying to dodge, he realized that he wouldn't have time, and erected a wind wall. Maya, anticipating this, summoned Sylph, directing air currents against his defense. The stones, enhanced by her magic, broke through the wall, and at that moment, Winberg, distracted, exposed a vulnerable spot. Shinjo, noticing this, swung his sword, wounding the demon in the arm. Winberg, astonished, dropped the blade, trembling with pain. The hero jumped back, preparing for the next step. The Wind King, recognizing their skill, skeptically asked if they believed it was enough to defeat him. Maya, worried, thought that their attack had not worked, but Shinjo, confident, realized that everything was going according to plan. He noticed the weakness of Winberg's technique. Heavy objects like stones are difficult to reflect in the wind. Maya, by disrupting his air currents, weakened the search spell, giving them an advantage. Having praised the elf for her plan, the hero ordered her to make the demon open up again, and he himself decided to take possession of his sword. Dodging the attacks, he snatched the blade from Winberg's hands. Maya, not understanding why he needed the enemy's sword, continued to support the hero, pointing out the emerging weak points. Winberg mockingly stated that Shinjo was clearly not a swordsman and would not defeat him with his own weapon. The hero, without answering, took the sword in one hand and the dagger in the other, and rushed to attack. His movements suddenly became faster and more precise, each swing sending out waves of wind that confused the demon. Winberg, unable to fight back, retreated, pressed into a corner. Maya, suggesting vulnerable spots, increased the pressure. The Wind King, losing his balance, screamed that it was impossible and tried to fly. But Shinjo, having deprived him of his flight magic, interrupted the maneuver. Swinging his wind sword, the hero declared that this was the end. Winberg, in despair calling him a pathetic man, tried to counterattack. But Shinjo, gathering his last strength, cut off his head with one blow. The Wind King collapsed, bleeding, muttering that he didn't expect to be defeated. He asked what strange skill allowed the hero to change his fighting style so drastically. Shinjo revealed the secret. His blessing of copying allows one to adopt one skill of another person that he has seen in person. He copied Winberg's fencing, although he had not previously practiced this ability, fearing its imperfection. Winberg, shocked, realized that before him was the blessing of the Creator God, and called the candidates for heroes the trump card of humanity. Before his death, he bitterly noted that Hector, his disciple, had foolishly aided the enemy by passing on to Shinjo a skill that he had developed to level 1. Winberg exhaled and fell silent. Maya, trembling with emotion, looked at the defeated enemy, realizing that her revenge was complete. Shinjo, exhausted, felt his strength waning, but he knew that their victory over one of the heavenly kings was only the beginning of the journey. Shinjo Kai, breathing heavily after defeating Winberg, realized the true power of one of the 4 heavenly kings. Ahead of him were 3 more equally powerful opponents, and behind them, the Demon King, surpassing them all. Besides, There were the king's children, like Isabel, with whom it was still too early to fight. Maya, approaching the hero, asked if Winberg was really dead. Shinjo confirmed, asking how she felt about revenge. The elf, thinking, admitted that she felt nothing. She expected that she would have to sacrifice herself, but now that everything was over, she felt only relief. Her family and village will not return, but the past has finally let her go. Shinju smiled slightly and said that without her help, he would have most likely lost. Maya waved it off and reminded him that these were her words, because she had been preparing for this moment for 10 years, but her strength was not enough. She thanked the hero for helping her with revenge, but he brushed it off, saying that he had no choice, and there was nothing to thank her for. The elf, however, insisted that she was glad of her decision to go with him. Without him, she would probably have run away from her mentor and died in vain. She suspected that Elban had foreseen this. Shinjo asked what Maya would do now. She shrugged her shoulders and admitted that she didn't know yet. All her goals had been achieved. The hero thoughtfully asked how long elves live. Maya explained that, as a half-elf, she would not live as long as her mentor, but for now she was willing to simply follow him. Shinju, after asking if she was sure, reminded her that his goal was to kill the Demon King. Maya nodded and replied that by destroying the king, they would prevent tragedies like her own, and that was worth the effort. She added that if he refused her help, he would have to fight alone. Shinjo chuckled and agreed that extra support wouldn't hurt, but ordered them to hurry. Demon reinforcements would arrive soon. Suddenly, Isabel appeared in front of them, watching the fight. She admitted that they had exceeded her expectations. She had originally planned to use them if they escaped, but she had not thought that they would defeat Winberg. Now no one would disrupt her plans. She disappeared through the portal, leaving them in confusion. Shinjo and Maya decided to return to Elban. The sage, having met them, was glad that they were safe, but was surprised by their quick return. Maya began to tell what had happened, but Elban, putting his hand on her head, said that he understood everything. She supported the student's decision to continue on her journey with Shinjo, wishing her good luck and new discoveries. Elban turned to the hero and asked if he knew about the situation on the front lines. Shinjo, alert, asked what had happened. The sage reported that the squad of hero candidates had been defeated. The hero, shocked, realized that Mido Shuji had lost. He asked who they were fighting. Maya intervened and revealed that their opponent was Stonge, the Earth King, one of the Heavenly Kings, equal in power to Winberg. Elban added that, although they miraculously survived, the candidates suffered greatly, and their fighting spirit was shattered. Shinjo, after thinking about it, decided to go to Fort Tracy. His goal of killing the Demon King required weakening the enemy, and an alliance with Mido Shuji and the other candidates could help in the fight against the remaining Heavenly Kings. Maya asked if the other candidates were as strong as he was. Shinjo replied that it was not a matter of strength, but of its proper application. Arriving at the fort, they saw the wounded being treated by a girl with the healing skill. She concentrated her mana and healed Mido Shuji's wound. The leader, noticing her fatigue, asked her not to overexert herself, but the healer, realizing that this was her only contribution, continued. Mido, lost in his memories, relived the battle with Stongai. Henry and the soldiers, having cleared the rear, helped the detachment retreat. But everyone was wounded not only physically, but also morally. The leader blamed himself, believing that his weakness led to defeat. He should have defeated the Heavenly King, but he failed. At Fort Aris, Stonge, the Earth King, stood guard over the surrounding area. Shinjo Kai, hiding at a great distance, studied him carefully. Maya, amazed by his keen eyesight, asked how he could see so far. The hero explained that as the appraisal level increases, secondary skills improve, including vision range. Using detailed evaluation, he learned that Stongai, a B rank with high durability, his defensive abilities were greatly enhanced. A new skill that appeared at the fourth level of evaluation allowed one to analyze the enemy's abilities, which gave an advantage in battle. However, after using display weaknesses, Shinju found nothing. Stongai had no weak points in his current state. Maya asked if he had managed to find out anything. The hero replied that the lack of weak points made the task more difficult. He learned that the demon had a high level of earth technique, masterful fencing, and a unique skill that activated in defense. Maya, thinking, noted that the title of Earth King was related to his attribute, which, like water, is strong in stability. Shinju asked if there was compatibility between attributes. The elf explained that it all depends on the purpose of the technique combination. Earth is not universal, and Stongai has a specific spell that determines his style. Without understanding this spell, the weak points would remain hidden. She had a hunch, but she didn't elaborate. Shinjo, deciding that he needed to face the demon at least once, asked about her idea, but the conversation was cut short. Meanwhile, at Fort Tracy, Mido Shuji, lost in thought, berated himself for his defeat at the hands of Stongai. He wondered what would have happened if Shinjo Kai had been with them, but he immediately pushed those thoughts away, deciding that he would not run away and would fight to the end. Suddenly his comrades crept up on him. Nagasho Rina chuckled and said that she knew where she would find him. He always does everything alone. Mido tried to justify himself, but Narumi calmed him down and assured him that the game was not over and they would not let him fight alone. Mido, touched, asked if they trusted him after the failure. Nagasho, calling him a fool, reproached him for not trusting the team. Narumi added that he wanted the leader to rely on them more. Mido smiled and admitted that he hadn't thought about it, but agreed that they had become stronger. He called on people not to be shy about sharing ideas in order to cover each other's backs. At that moment, Arashi appeared, looking for the leader. Noticing his gaze, he muttered that next time Mido should let him blow up the stone freak. Mido, surprised by his visit, did not expect Arashi to come to him. He grumbled and admitted that he couldn't handle it alone, but together they would blow that bastard's brains out. The team, amazed that Arashi had agreed to collaborate, joked that it looked like it was going to snow. Mido, inspired, declared that they would defeat Stongai together. Arashi, pleased with his determination, noted that the leader had finally begun to think. Kanzaki Rin, watching from the side, was happy about their unity, but worried that they still didn't have a tactic against Stongai. Suddenly she heard a familiar voice. Shinjo Kai, appearing from the shadows, asked her to remain silent so as not to attract attention. He asked if it was true that they had lost to one of the heavenly kings, and what spells Stongai had used. Rin confirmed that the demon created golems and controlled the earth, which completely coincided with Maya's guess. Hearing her name, Rin flushed, suspecting that she was his girlfriend. But Shinjo waved it off and thanked him for the information. Rin asked if he wanted to fight them, but the hero replied that he would help, but from the shadows, as always. Open interference, he said, would only harm the team. Shinju, thinking, began to formulate a plan, realizing that knowledge of Stongai and its techniques could be the key to victory for Mido Shuji and his squad. At Fort Tracy, the hero candidates prepared for a new battle. Among them was a newcomer, still not accustomed to battles. She was glad that with her, their squad numbered exactly 100 people. Nagasho Rina, noticing her enthusiasm, praised her. She also noticed the number 9 student and was surprised by her decision to join the combat squad. Yumi, embarrassed, explained that she had heard about the difficulties the team was facing and wanted to help. She asked if everything would be okay. At that moment, her thoughts were interrupted. A couple of days ago, being exhausted after cleaning, she found Shinju Kai in her room. Yumi, screaming in surprise, demanded to know how he had entered her room without permission. Shinjo calmly said that he hadn't seen her for a long time, and reminded her that Mido Shuji and the others were fighting on the front lines. Her healing skill, which involves mana manipulation, is needed to help them win. Yumi objected that she was not a member of the squad, but the hero, noting her inner strength, encouraged her to join Mido. He added that Leonora, who had filled her with fear, was dead. Shinjo had killed her. Yumi's mental wounds had healed, and now was not the time to pretend to be an awkward waitress, remembering that incident with the broken plates. Yumi clenched her fists and asked why he thought she would agree. Shinju chuckled and said that he knew how to convince her, and asked if she didn't want to help Nagasho Reina and Chinami. Yumi, recognizing his ability to find the right words, was surprised by his concern for his classmates. Shinjo explained that he simply did not want to lose a valuable ally with her abilities. Yumi, remembering that he was wanted, asked if he was going to join the squad. The hero replied that Digrest's army was still looking for him, so he was acting from the shadows, moving the pieces into the right places. Yumi, clenching her fist resolutely, agreed to try if her power could really help. Meanwhile, Kanzaki Rin, remembering the conversation with Shinjo, understood why he needed Yumi. Her healing mana could be the key to exploiting Stongai's weaknesses, though Rin doubted it would be successful. Shinjo, who had not fought the Earth King, believed that the team could develop effective tactics if they thought carefully. He wanted to see how much they had grown, and asked Rin to pass on his words to Mido Shuji. The girl nodded and returned to the team. Mido approached her and discussed the battle plan, emphasizing that this time they must not lose. Rin nodded silently, at a loss for words. Maya, observing the candidates from hiding with Shinjo, noted that he could have come up with a better strategy. The hero replied that by telling them what to do, he would be depriving them of their independence. His goal is to kill the Demon King, and to do so he needs candidates who have power but lack control. He will give hints, but in battle they will have to think for themselves. At this time, Amelia and the knights approached Fort Aris. She ordered the soldiers to attack, taking the demons by surprise. They, regretting that they had allowed the enemy to retreat the last time, rushed into battle. Amelia, inspiringly, ordered that the path be cleared for the candidates so that they could reach the leader. Mido Shuji's team rushed forward, fighting off the monsters. Through the window they saw Stongai, who seemed to be waiting for them. Muttering that he wouldn't let them go alive this time, he summoned stone golems. The candidates, already having a plan, began to act. Nagasho Reina and Arashi attacked the golems while Yumi prepared to use her mana. Shinjo, watching from afar, noted that everything was going according to plan so far. But success depended on how the team used its strengths at the crucial moment. The team of hero candidates, inspired by Mido Shuji's words, acted according to plan. Nagasho Reina, standing next to Kinoshita Yumi, asked if she was okay. The newcomer nodded confidently and asked him to rely on her. Activating her water manipulation skill, Yumi unleashed a powerful stream of water at the golems, knocking them off their feet. Arashi took advantage of the moment and attacked the golems with explosions, tearing them to pieces. Mido Shuji swung his sword and cut down the monsters, while the others finished them off with their weapons. However, just like last time, the golems tried to regenerate by assembling themselves from the debris. But this time, something went wrong. Their recovery slowed down, and they fell apart. The team, shocked, realized that Yumi was not there in the previous battle. Could her skill have been the key? Shinju Kai, watching from hiding with Maya, noted that everything was going as she predicted. The moisture that had soaked into the rock that bound the golem's stones had damaged their structure, making them more difficult to control. The effect had exceeded the elf's expectations. Mido Shuji, noticing that the wet golems were not regenerating, called on the team to destroy them. Yumi, feeling a surge of strength, used the skill Big Wave, flooding the battlefield with water, finally destroying the golems. Stongai, the Earth King, realized the enemy's plan to first neutralize his golems and then attack him himself. Praising their strategist, he declared that the golems were just pawns, and now they would see the true power of the land. Picking up rocks from the ground, he rained them down on the team like machine gun fire. Hashimoto used telekinesis to intercept the falling rocks and send them back at the boss. Stongai, surprised, did not expect anyone to interrupt his control over the land. At that moment, Kanzaki Rin used her control skill, paralyzing the demon. Arashi, deciding this was his chance, charged at the boss, delivering explosive punches. But Stongai erected a mud wall, mocking that his defense could not be penetrated. Mido Shuji, using the distance reduction skill, instantly appeared behind the enemy and swung his sword, aiming for the neck. However, Stongai reacted by parrying the attack with his blade, stating that he could not be stopped that way. Hashimoto used telekinesis again, returning the rocks to the battle, and Narumi manipulated the wind to launch wind spears at the demon. The team attacked from all sides. Stongai, while acknowledging their efforts, still believed that it was not enough to break through his defenses. He erected a stone wall, expanding it to keep out his enemies. Yumi, realizing that her moment had come, used water magic again, flooding the stone wall. The wet ground lost its firmness, weakening the demon's defense. Mido Shuji, shouting that it was the end, rushed towards the boss, supported by Arashi, whose explosions increased the onslaught. Stongai felt the pressure as he fought two opponents. He understood that, at this rate, they would break him sooner or later. Deciding to put everything on the line, he began to concentrate his forces, gathering all the magic of his defensive techniques for a powerful attack. At this moment, Shinju Kai, who was watching from the shadows, activated Weakness Display. Noticing the vulnerable spot that had appeared during Stongai's moment of concentration, he threw the dagger with frightening accuracy. The knife, piercing the target, caused the demon to stagger. Stongai, roaring, fell to his knees. His stones froze in the air and then turned to dust. The team, stunned by the sudden fall of the boss, did not immediately understand what had happened. The team of hero candidates rejoiced, celebrating their victory over Stongai, the Earth King. Mido Shuji and Arashi delivered the final blow, but the leader, who noticed the flying dagger, realized that the decisive moment did not belong to them. Arashi, picking up the knife, recognized Shinjo Kai's weapon and, not believing his eyes, began to look around the room along with the others, looking for where the hero could be hiding. They quickly realized that this was his work. Narumi, approaching Mido, noted that their plan worked thanks to Kinoshita Yumine, whose water magic gave him an advantage. However, Mido, smiling nervously, admitted that at the last moment he felt a huge magical power from Stongai. Without Shinjo's intervention, they wouldn't have succeeded. Hashimoto, noticing the leader's sadness, asked why he wasn't happy. Mido began to explain, but the girl interrupted him and suggested postponing the conversation, since they had defeated one of the heavenly kings. The team, pushing Mido to the center, praised him as an excellent commander. He just smiled, touched by their support. They then began to cheer on Arashi, calling him a hero who was ready to lead them to the ends of the earth. Arashi, while irritably ordering everyone to be quiet, was still upset that he had not dealt the final blow. His comrades, understanding his feelings, assured him that it was he who had driven Stongai into a corner, and that was the main thing. Arashi remained silent and thought. Meanwhile, Mido, having climbed to the top of the tower of Fort Aris, held Stongai's head in his hands, declaring to the demon army that their king had been defeated. He called on them to lay down their arms. The demons were stunned and could not believe that their leader had lost. Amelia, raising her sword, proclaimed victory, and Henry, beaming with joy, congratulated everyone. Shinju, along with Maya, watched this from behind cover. The elf, noticing that the number of demons was still large, asked if it was dangerous. Shinjo explained that with the death of a leader like Stongai or Winberg, the demon army loses its charisma and will to resist, their weak point. Maya, remembering that there was no pursuit after Winberg's death, agreed. She asked if Shinjo was pleased, clarifying that she meant his intervention in the fight. After all, he wanted to train the team, not kill for them. The hero, looking gloomy, explained that at that moment he felt a powerful thirst for blood from Stongai. He couldn't let the candidates die until he prepared them, admitted that, being a killer at heart, he wanted them to know it. Maya, surprised by his concern for the team, smiled. Shinjo, slightly irritated, asked her not to address him as you, suggesting that she simply call him Kai. The elf happily agreed, noting that he still cared about others. Kai thought, of the 4 heavenly kings, only 2 remained, but ahead were the direct descendants of the Demon King, like Isabel, whose strength was unknown. The path to the king himself will not be easy. At this moment, the demons were talking, retreating from the battlefield. They mentioned that they had captured some creature, not a spirit, but unable to move. She was the princess of the Beastmen, and now the Beastmen alliance is under the control of the demons. The week following the victory over Stongai brought a wave of excitement to the sacred kingdom of Digrest. The army's sharp advance excited the people. The soldiers' fighting spirit rose, and the glory of the hero candidates grew with each passing day. They became a symbol of hope for humanity. The king, praising Mido Shuji, declared him a knight, emphasizing that defeating one of the 4 heavenly kings was priceless. Mido, having thanked, felt exhausted. Hashimoto, noticing his tension, asked if he was nervous. Amelia interrupted, noting that youth takes its toll, and such events are exhausting. Henry added that Mido, who had not received an aristocratic upbringing, spent the whole night studying etiquette so as not to disgrace himself in front of the king, and did it flawlessly. Mido admitted that it was a desperate measure. A mistake could cost him his job. Henry, smiling, explained that he wanted to warn, but it seemed that he only added pressure. As a knight, Mido is now obligated to play this role, and the life of an aristocrat is not easy. He reminded that in Digrest, power belongs to the church, which controls even the holy knights. Amelia gave an example. The king appointed Mido as a knight by decree of the Pope, making him a holy knight and captain of the 11th Squad, known as the Squad of Heroes. The church expects him to become the strongest through the hero candidates. Mido, surprised, asked why make him a knight if the church already controls the knights. Henry, hinting at political intrigue and a struggle for power, offered to tell the details, but Mido refused. Henry only advised to be on guard because now he was equal to him and Amelia, and they expected him to behave accordingly. Shinjo Kai, upon learning of Mido's new status, was surprised. It seemed he had gained the right to vote. Maya, smiling, did not understand why this was bad, assuming that Digrest wanted to make Mido the standard-bearer of the war, showing that the candidates were under the control of the state. Kai explained that it wasn't that simple. Their goal was to kill the Demon King to return home, but the Holy Kingdom and Leonora used them as pawns. You can't completely trust the top brass. Kanzaki Rin, hearing this, advised to be careful and, noticing Maya, asked who she was. Kai introduced the elf as a half-elf mage traveling with him. Maya, having greeted him happily, was surprised how Rin ended up next to Kai. Rin, embarrassed by her familiarity, clarified that they were just friends. Kai added that Rin was his comrade, but in their world, they didn't even communicate. Maya, curious, asked if they were close, but Kai waved it off and changed the topic to the plan to kill the Demon King. He's going to act from the shadows like he did in the battle with Stongai, and Rin is supposed to be the liaison between him and the class. Rin interrupted and asked if she could go with him. Kai, apologizing, refused. Without her, he would not be able to contact his classmates, many of whom were against him. Rin is irreplaceable. The girl, exhaling happily, agreed. but noted that not everyone considered him an enemy. For example, Mido Shuji. Kai thoughtfully said that Mido probably wouldn't accept his help directly, which was natural. In order to defeat the Demon King, he had to grow himself. Rin asked if he was really going to train Mido. Kai explained that he couldn't handle the Demon King's army alone. He and Maya defeated Winberg, the Wind King, but were on the verge of death. Rin, amazed that the two of them had defeated an opponent equal to Stongai, realized that Maya was not so simple, since Kai trusted her. She realized that their strength was still insufficient against those who surpassed the heavenly kings. Kai instructed Rin to keep an eye on his classmates and Digrest, reporting to him regularly, and to tell Mido that he too would do everything to destroy the Demon King. Rin, after saying goodbye to Maya, promised herself to become stronger, feeling that she couldn't help yet. The Holy Army's victory over Stongai, one of the four heavenly kings, became the impetus for a large-scale offensive. The newly formed 11th Division, known as the Hero Squad, under the command of Mido Shuji, fiercely advanced to the front lines, retaking land from the Demon King's army. The Orcano Mountains and the city of Neutrath fell, thanks not only to the death of Stongai, who led the front, but also to the death of Winberg, who was in charge of logistics. This caused chaos among the demons, but the Holy Army, unaware of this, attributed the success to their own power. At Fort Tracy, the crew gathered to celebrate their triumph. Narumi, having drained his glass, was delighted with the victory ceremony. Hashimoto, noticing that he was drinking, became indignant, reminding him that he was only 15, and took away the glass, despite his protests that in this world that was the age of majority. Nagasho Rina intervened and suggested that they turn a blind eye to this, but Hashimoto only became more angry. Mido Shuji, having overheard the soldiers' conversation, caught their doubts. Defeating one heavenly king should not have weakened the demons so much. He shared with Amelia the thought that it was too simple and could be a trap, but their search revealed nothing suspicious. Nagasho Rina interrupted him and accused him of being overly suspicious, calling the demon army a bunch of fools. Mido, disagreeing, suggested that Shinjo Kai might have influenced the situation from the shadows. Nagasho Rina laughed and waved it off, thinking it was ridiculous, and asked Arashi's opinion, who, while chewing his food, muttered that he didn't know anything. Kanzaki Rin intervened and confirmed Mido's words. Shinjo Kai told her that he had killed Winberg, who was in charge of these lands, which weakened the demon's defense. Everyone gasped, amazed that he had single-handedly defeated the Heavenly King. Narumi smirked and remarked that he always suspected Shinju was muddying the waters by calling him a monster. Nagasho, flushed, accused Rin of lying. But Hashimoto, angry, declared that even if it was true, she would not forgive him. The team wondered what Shinjo was doing now. Rin shrugged and replied that she didn't know, but his goal was to kill the Demon King. Meanwhile, Shinju Kai and Maya, west of Neutrath, were fighting a horde of monsters. The hero used a new skill, Thunder Strike, enhanced with lightning, which was activated thanks to Maya's magic. The elf summoned the spirit salamander, surrounding the enemies with fire. After the fight, Shinjo asked her not to imitate his style, to which she retorted that she only intervened when he was in danger. The hero sighed and admitted that his control over the technique was still weak, despite his training. Maya explained that his thunder attribute is rare. His attacks are fast and powerful, but difficult to control. For a beginner, he had already mastered the basic techniques, which was abnormally fast, since his friends had gained control through blessing. Shinju, thinking about Thunder Strike, complained that he couldn't use it in battle due to the distracting enemies. Maya explained that a successful spell requires a clear image in the mind, which is difficult to achieve in close combat, so she avoids such battles herself. Kai objected that he needed the technique specifically for close combat, otherwise it was useless. He began to doubt whether it was worth spending so much effort, but admitted that new power was necessary to defeat the Demon King. He praised Maya, calling her knowledge worthy of a sage's disciple. The elf, embarrassed, waved her hand, but was interrupted by a new squad of monsters. Shinju chuckled and noted that the enemies were a good practice, but their numbers did not decrease no matter how many they killed. Shinju Kai, continuing to fight the horde of monsters, once again used Thunder Strike. Lightning struck the enemies, causing them to writhe from the current. Practice paid off. He could finally use the technique in battle, but its power still left much to be desired. Dodging the attacks, he darted from one monster to another, stabbing his dagger into the weak points revealed by the assessment. The monsters fell, but their numbers did not decrease. Kai realized that throwing daggers enhanced with magic was more effective, but creating a clear image for spells during combat was difficult. Suddenly, one of the monsters attacked from behind, but the hero reacted, cut off its limb and, clinging to a tree, dodged a new attack. The monsters attacked from the front, but Kai, waving his dagger, fought them off. Among the horde, he noticed a leader. Using assessment, he determined its location and decided to test Thunder Strike on it. Maya, exhausted, continued to use Salamander's fire magic, creating explosions. She shouted to Kai that it was time to retreat. There were too many monsters, and they would not advance any further. The hero agreed, noting that their strength was running out. They ran for cover. Maya, breathing heavily, complained of fatigue, and Kai added that the enemies were not only numerous, but also strong. He assumed that only demons lived in these lands, since they easily controlled monsters with low intelligence. Reaching the cliff, they looked down at the Demon Kingdom's territory, realizing that invading it would be difficult. A week after the reconnaissance, the Holy Army continued its offensive, retaking lands and invading the Demon Kingdom. However, hordes of much stronger monsters awaited them there. For the hero candidates, this was not a problem. They fought back confidently, but ordinary soldiers became prey. Amelia urged them not to panic, but Heinrich noticed that the monsters' attacks were not chaotic. They were clearly controlled by a demon. Mido Shuji, having seen the figure in demonic attire, realized that it was the greater demon Elsa. She smiled coldly and ordered to use the monsters to exhaust the human army and then send out the demonic troops. Mido, realizing that they would be overwhelmed by numbers, ordered Amelia to retreat. She gave the order with a heavy heart. The demons, pleased, discussed the ease of victory. One of them noted that using only monsters was Elsa's decision to play it safe. Another mentioned that the Beastmen Alliance would soon be under their control, and the demonic elite had begun to take war seriously. The victory over the two heavenly kings alarmed them, but they believed that humans could not defeat everyone. Maya, who overheard this with Kai, was surprised. Is the Beastmen Alliance under the control of demons? She had never heard of such a thing. Kai frowned and asked her to help him gather more information, realizing that this turn of events changed the balance of power. After a devastating retreat from the Demon Kingdom, the Holy Army returned to Fort Tracy for healing and rest. Amelia reported that they were able to retake their lands, but they were immediately routed in enemy territory. She asked if anyone had any ideas on how to fix the situation. The problem was the endless stream of monsters, and without a solution to this threat, the invasion was pointless. One of the knights asked if they had seen the demons tame such creatures, noting that their Arab technology did not provide for such a thing, and until now they had acted in a straightforward manner. Henry noted that the demons seemed to have become more serious, and behind the monsters there was an experienced higher demon who knew the tactics of people. Knight Artem suggested sending scouts into the forest near the border, where there are the most monsters. If you can break through it, you can fight back the demons. Amelia objected. The forest was too big, the paths were unknown, and the enemy had probably provided protection. She called for calm. They returned the lands of the people, albeit with losses. More soldiers died during the retreat than in the battle. Henry agreed that morale was high, but was it worth moving forward? Hashimoto reminded them that their goal was to kill the Demon King. The knights nodded, but noted that it was not that simple. Amelia asked Hashimoto if she had any ideas. She thought about it and suggested increasing the troops, but immediately admitted that this would create more targets. Mido Shuji objected. In this world, individual abilities are too different, and numerical superiority will not help against monsters. There will only be more deaths. He suggested focusing on strengthening the elite troops, but Amelia explained that all the high-level soldiers were already on the front lines, and there were almost no experienced fighters left in the country. The only way out is to recruit new recruits and train them, which will take time. The team agreed that this was reasonable, but Mido, upon reflection, realized that their goals diverged. The candidates want to kill the Demon King to return home, but Digrest, having reclaimed his lands, sees no urgency in continuing the war. Henry, approaching Mido, asked his opinion. The leader admitted that their plan would take years, and he wanted to defeat the Demon King as quickly as possible. It takes at least 2 years to train new recruits to restore the kingdom's strength. Henry, understanding his impatience, noted that haste could lead to death. He reminded that the candidates are strong, but they have room to grow. By gradually increasing their power, they will be able to win. Mido, remembering the fight with Stongai, where they barely survived thanks to Shinju Kai, agreed that the Demon King was probably stronger than all the Heavenly Kings combined. Henry honestly admitted that in their current state, there was no chance. Mido, realizing that the knight was right, decided to discuss it with the team. He understood that there was no need to rush. Losing one of his comrades would be unforgivable. Candidates, having learned that returning home could take at least 2 years, panicked. Hashimoto, trying to calm them down, explained that going against the Demon King now would result in pointless death. Arashi, in disbelief, accused Mido of weakness, asking if he had fallen out of his tree. Mido Shuji, trying to calm the team down, explained that, like them, he wanted to quickly defeat the Demon King and return home. But the Digrest military saw the situation differently. He objected to Arashi, asking if he was really suggesting that he fight his way through the hordes of monsters in the demon lands alone. The leader stressed that the Sacred Kingdom uses them, as they use it, but without the support of the state, they will perish. Arashi disagreed, stating that it was not necessary to attack head-on, as small groups had an advantage. Their target is not the demon army, but the Demon King's head. Mido, alarmed, called Arashi's plan too risky, warning that even if successful, many would die. Arashi, flushed, retorted that killing the Demon King was dangerous by default, and cowards could leave. He, losing his patience, pounced on the leader, demanding that he wake up. Mido, using the sword that banishes evil and the skill of light, insisting on the safety of the team, refused to sacrifice his comrades. He defended himself, but Arashi counterattacked with explosions. Their fight was interrupted by Kanzaki Rin, who used her control skill to bind them with magical chains. She shouted that their fight would destroy the castle and attract the guards. Arashi, in a rage, tore the chains apart and shook Rin, who had put almost all her mana into the spell. He said that only real battles can toughen you up, but Mido doesn't understand that. Hashimoto supported Mido, and Nagasho Reina asked what was the point of attacking if everyone would die. Sasaki Satoshi stated that he would rather die than stay here any longer. Tachibaka Hideki countered that this world is not so bad, and Shinami Kaori supported him. Nagasho, surprised by Kaori's attitude, heard her explanation that her mother was in poor health and was worried about her. Ozaki added that his younger sister was left alone after their parents fled, and he had to return. Hono, in support, admitted that she was also worried about her family and could not wait 2 years. Narumi, exhaling, mentioned that a girl was waiting for him. Muta Atsushi and Togawa Kenta joined Arashi, believing his determination to be more reliable than Mido's uncertainty. The majority of the team leaned towards Arashi. Arashi turned to Mido and asked him what he thought. The leader, in panic, lowered his head, not wanting to continue the argument. Arashi raised his hand, announced that he was leaving, and called for those who were willing to take the risk. The team split. Some of the candidates went with Arashi, while others stayed with Mido. Hashimoto, looking at Narumi, asked if he would leave, but he replied that he was needed as a liaison. Kanzaki Rin was torn between wanting to return home to her grandfather and sympathizing with Arashi. But she remembered Shinju Kai's words about staying with Mido. Arashi, having made sure that his group was ready, ordered them to leave before they were noticed. Shinjo Kai, who was watching from the castle, was shocked by the team's split. Arashi, not expecting his appearance, froze, and his group became wary. In the midst of the tense situation after the team of hero candidates split, Arashi, who was leading the split group, noticed Shinju Kai and, irritated, asked why he was even there and how dare he show up. His comrades, fearing to attract security, asked Arashi to speak more quietly. There was little time. Shinjo wasted no time in getting down to business, asking for help from the team. And the scene immediately shifts to the moment when he watched Arashi's group leave the castle where the split occurred. Maya, standing next to Kai outside the window, expressed concern about whether he was sure everything would be okay. Kai, looking thoughtfully at the divided candidates, replied that he did not know, but understood both sides. Mido Shuji is right. You can't stand against the demon army alone, but you can't blindly follow the plans of the sacred kingdom of Digrest either. Arashi, who insists on a quick offensive, is also right that waiting 2 years is unacceptable, but his recklessness is dangerous. Maya asked what Kai himself would do. He listed 3 options. The first was to force the top of Digrest to act by force, but this would create problems with Mido and condemnation from the state, which is not so important if the goal is to return home. The second is to implement Arashi's idea by attacking from within, inciting unrest in the demon kingdom, but Arashi is unable to organize a civil war. Third, use the information to gain support from other forces, such as the Beastman Alliance, which would give the Digrest army a chance. The scene returns to Arashi's group, who have stopped in the forest. Kai decided to tell about the princess of the Beastmen, Sina, the daughter of the leader of the cat race, who was kidnapped by demons. He learned this by torturing the soldiers of the Demon King's army and was confident in the veracity of the information. The team gasped, shocked by the brutality of the interrogations and the fact that Kai was talking about it so easily. They also noticed Maya, calling her cute and asking who she was. Arashi, irritated, asked what business they had with the Beastmen. Kai began to explain that to the south was Grandance, an alliance of beastmen that remained neutral in the war between humans and demons. Arashi interrupted, calling them cowards who were afraid of demons. Maya countered that the beastmen were stronger than he thought. Their physical form and heightened senses allowed them to repel the demons' attacks. But their strength was not enough to destroy the Demon King's army, whose main forces were occupied by humans. Kai explained that saving Sina was a trump card for negotiations with Grandance. If they unite with humans, there will be a chance to turn the war around. Ninomiya asked why Digrest hadn't formed an alliance with the Beastmen yet. Maya explained that the Beastmen disliked the demons for their arrogance, but in the past they suffered discrimination from humans who called them subhumans. Exiled, they created their own union and avoid contact with people. Rescuing Sina, given the importance of blood ties to the Beastmen, would open the way to negotiations. Kai asked the team if they were willing to take the risk, since inaction would change nothing. Arashi, flushed, accused Kai of being presumptuous. But the team members, reassuring the leader, reminded him that their lives depended on his decision. Arashi reluctantly agreed to try. Kai laid out the plan, Arashi uses the explosion to distract the demons, creating chaos. The team splits into groups of 3, with Inoue and Yanagi protecting Motono, Ozaki healing the wounded, Maya providing cover with fire magic, and Arashi fighting the greater demon Zagandra. After a tense discussion, Arashi's team, separated from the hero squad, moved south. One of the group members, Ninomiya, asked if this was the right way. Shinju Kai, who was going with them, confirmed that the Beastmen Alliance was in the south, and their goal was to intercept the convoy carrying the captive princess. He explained that the path parallel to the forest at the border of the Beastmen Kingdom was ideal. The demons and Beastmen did little trade, meaning the path was not heavily guarded. Ninomiya, still hesitant, asked if they were afraid of being caught. Kai, smiling confidently, replied that he had found a way to sneak in unnoticed, that there were usually animals in the forest, but there were also plenty of monsters, and he knew how to get around them. Ninomiya asked if the carriage would be useful, as they might get stuck without it. He offered to help Sorairo, student number 16, whose blessing of space allowed the creation of a pocket storage for items. The larger the storage, the more mana was required. Sorairo, hearing this, laughed, happy that Shinju Kai remembered her ability. One of the team members, impressed, asked Kai if this meant that he had been gathering information in the Demon Kingdom all this time. Shinju nodded, explaining that he had been looking for an alternative way to return home, but had come to the conclusion that the only way was to kill the Demon King. That's why he began reconnaissance after learning about the kidnapping of the Beastman princess. Arashi, impatiently intervening, declared that they needed to speed up. The convoy would not wait for them. Kai agreed and asked Sorairo to move the carriage and luggage into her pocket space. The team moved into the forest, but suddenly the group's leader, Arashi, exclaimed upon noticing the monsters. Everyone immediately prepared for battle. Despite the fear, the team acted in a coordinated manner. Ninomiya shouted for them to form a circle, the support squad in the center and the rest to attack. Using the support technique that linked their powers, they gained new abilities and began to fight the monsters fiercely. Their attacks were precise and their coordination impressive, giving them a clear advantage. After the fight, Arashi, breathing heavily, asked if there were any wounded. Hearing no answer, he muttered that the wounded would have to go to the healer later and ordered them to move on. Shinju Kai, observing, noted to himself that the team was acting in a coordinated manner, and Arashi was showing the makings of a leader, caring for others. However, at that moment, another monster attacked the leader. Maya, who was standing behind, instantly summoned Salamander, and a powerful fiery explosion incinerated the enemy into coals. The team, amazed, admired her strength, comparing her to Nagasho Reina, but surpassing her in power. Arashi, noticing this, became angry, deciding that his style had been copied. Shinjo Kai approached Maya and quietly reproached her, saying that she had put on such a show in vain. Now competition could begin within the team. However, he immediately advised Arashi to thank the elf for her help. The team members surrounded Maya and admired her strength, and some of the guys, jokingly, said that Kai got such a beauty, and they also want to find such a friend. Maya, confused, didn't know if she could communicate with people. Kai, having given permission, said that she was free to do whatever she wanted. The elf, delighted, went to the team, chatting and having fun, having found friends for the first time. Meanwhile, Kai climbed the mountain to survey the surrounding area. Arashi, irritated by the wait, asked if the convoy would definitely arrive. The hero, using assessment, assured that he could already see their target in the distance. Shinju Kai, after analyzing the situation with appraisal, revealed the composition of the convoy: 3 lesser demons, 15 medium ones, and possibly a couple inside the carriage, as well as 1 greater demon, Zagandra, their leader. He warned Arashi not to let his guard down. Zagandra, although not as strong as Stongai, was still a greater demon. Arashi waved it off and said that he would handle it himself, and if the demon got in the way, he would kill him. Kai, remaining calm, explained that he planned to leave the demons to the team and laid out a simple plan. Arashi must use his explosion to attract attention while attacking with terrain advantage. The rest are divided into groups of 3, with Inoue and Yanagi protecting Motono, Ozaki treating the wounds and delivering the wounded to Motono, and Maya covering everyone. The greater demon is left behind by Arashi, while the others create chaos. Kai will sneak up to the carriage and save the princess of the beastmen, Sina. If everything goes well, he will give a signal, and then they will act according to the situation. If they are pushed back, they will retreat. Arashi nodded confidently and said that he would deal with the demon leader, and their shock would play into their hands. However, part of the team opposed Kai, indignant at why he was giving orders. Arashi barked, ordering them to shut up and follow Kai's plan. The team, albeit reluctantly, complied. Meanwhile, Zagandra's convoy moved through the forest. The demons, exhausted from the long march from the Beastmen Alliance without stopping, grumbled. Zagandra, also tired from riding, thought about stopping, but instead decided to check on the captive. Approaching the cart, he ordered the demons to guard the perimeter. The princess of the Beastmen, Sina, of the Cat clan, met him with a cold gaze. Zagandra, grinning, asked how she felt, adding that they would soon reach the city where the dungeon awaited her. Sina, complaining about the shaking in the carriage, said that capturing her would not force the Beastmen Alliance to submit. Zagandra, calling her naive, stated that the daughter of the leader of the cat race was a valuable trophy. When Sina snapped that her influence was exaggerated, the demon became angry, called her a brat, and tore her clothes, threatening to taste her body to show her her place. He reached out to her, but at that moment there was a powerful explosion. Zagandra turned around, and the demons screamed about the attack of humans. He was shocked and could not believe that it was ordinary people, not beastmen, who were attacking them. Arashi's explosion scattered everything around, and a fierce battle began. The hero candidates worked together in groups to repel the demons' attacks. Inoue and Yanagi protected Motono, Ozaki treated the wounded, and Maya, using Salamander's fire magic, wreaked havoc among the enemies. Zagandra, shocked, did not understand how people could push back his elite soldiers. Arashi, noticing the leader, rushed towards him, flexing his fists. Zagandra, tensing up, summoned his spear, concentrating his power, and asked who he was. Arashi grinned and replied that he didn't need to know, he was there to have fun. The enraged demon rushed to attack, shouting that a man could not defeat him. Arashi, having encountered Zagandra, realized that the demon was strong, but not on the level of Stongai. He decided that by putting in more energy, he would make the explosions stronger. However, his magic consumed a lot of energy. After 7 explosions, he would be physically weakened and would not be able to compete with the demon. The only way out is to force Zagandra to open up and deliver a precise blow to the head or heart. Zagandra, recognizing in Arashi the candidate for hero who had defeated Winberg and Stongai, became wary. He did not know how the people had figured out the convoy, but he understood that their target was Sina. Noticing that his soldiers were being pressed, he decided to kill Arashi with one blow, running with his spear at maximum speed. Arashi, sensing the enemy's speed, used the skill Mine. An explosion under the hooves of Zagandra's horse incinerated the animal. The demon, struck by the trap, did not have time to notice it. Arashi, pleased, knew that the Mina was weaker than a normal explosion, but ideal for surprise attacks. Under the smokescreen, he snuck up behind him, preparing to strike, but Zagandra reacted by using his scatter skill. The demon's attacks flew around, and Arashi, unable to dodge, fell, receiving a wound. The pain was intense, but he shouted to his team not to be distracted and to continue the fight. Zagandra, analyzing, realized that Arashi relied on intuition, like a wild animal, and concentrated energy for protection. The demon could create explosive traps by touching the ground. He decided to keep Arashi at a distance, tiring him out, and watch his movements to anticipate the mines. Arashi grinned and understood the enemy's plan. Concentrating his energy into a fireball, he declared that Zagandra had made a mistake. Using the skill Shot at its maximum power, he unleashed an S-level explosion on the demon, incinerating it to ashes. Maya watched in delight as Arashi defeated the greater demon single-handedly. The remaining demons, shocked by the death of their leader, froze. Ninomiya, having inspired the team, used a support technique, increasing their fighting power. The candidates rushed to finish off the demons, completely destroying the squad. Meanwhile, Shinjo Kai sneaked up to the carriage, opened the door, and found Sina. The princess, not expecting to see a man, asked if he had come to save her. Kai, smiling slightly, replied that you could say that. Shinjo Kai took out his dagger and began to cut the ropes that bound Sina, the princess of the beastmen. She looked at him warily and asked what they were up to. Kai answered honestly that their goal was similar to demons, to use her, but for their own interests. Sina, smiling slightly, called it an honest approach. Kai shrugged and said that there was no point in lying. Would she have believed him if he had said that he had come solely to save her? Sina, after thinking, replied that she hadn't thought about it, but she wasn't going to just stand by after her release. She suddenly activated her partial transformation skill, turning into a beast with sharp claws, and pounced on Kai. Kai, dodging her quick attacks, noted the high physical abilities of the beastmen. Deciding not to delay, he used Thunder Shock, a basic technique that discharged electricity. The blow stunned Sina, and she collapsed, struck by magic she had not seen in a long time. Kai explained that Thunder Shock is not the most powerful technique, but is effective for distraction in close combat. Sina, still in doubt, did not understand where he got such strength from. Kai, looking at her calmly, asked if she acknowledged the difference in their power. He offered her a choice. Either she went with them voluntarily, or he would tie her up again. Sina, exhaling, agreed to follow them, admitting that it was better than staying with the demons. Meanwhile, reinforcements from the demons arrived, but they were doomed. Realizing that they had no chance, they wavered before the team's coordinated attack. Arashi grabbed one of the demons by the throat, squeezed him, and told him to tell the Demon King, "It's nothing personal, but we're going for his head. Let him sit quietly and wait." In the evening, the team gathered around the fire, discussing the next step. The victory inspired them, and the captured food turned out to be edible. Some joked that by stealing the princess and the supplies they looked like bandits. Others laughed and replied that they were already bandits. Sina, sitting by the fire, looked at the food hesitantly. Kai, noticing her behavior, asked why she wasn't eating. The princess, embarrassed, asked if she could take the food, since it was so good. Arashi chuckled and said that it was barely decent food compared to their world. Kai, encouraging Sina, explained that they needed her alive, so let her eat. After trying the soup, Sina was delighted with its taste. Maya, deciding to establish contact, asked how Sina had been captured. The princess said that she was hunting in the forest, far from the kingdom of the beastmen, where there should not be demons. However, they knew where to look for her, and attacked in an organized manner. Kai frowned and assumed that her capture was part of the demons' plan to subjugate the Beastmen alliance. The girls wondered why the demons needed control over the Beastmen. Did they really want to conquer the world since they had already invaded Digrest? Sina, after thinking, answered that it looked like demons. She asked what people wanted from her. Kai explained that they were using her as a bargaining chip to negotiate with the Beastmen alliance to gain their support against the Demon King. Arashi added that without his death, they would not return to their world. Sina exhaled and called them heroes, rumors of whom had reached the beastmen. She agreed to cooperate, considering it gratitude for the rescue, and added that the hot food was a nice bonus. Sina shared a theory that there might be a traitor at the top of the Beastmen alliance working for the demons, which would explain how they knew her location. Betrayal within the Beastmen alliance may be the key to weakening the demons, but to do so, they must convince Grandance to join the war. Shinjo Kai, having freed the Beastman Princess Sina, left the territory of the Demon Kingdom with Arashi's group, returning the same way to the city of Neutrath. Meanwhile, Mido Shuji, who remained in Neutrath, continued to hone his skills. Nagasho Rina approached him with the news that Arashi and his team had returned and were at the gate. But the knights refused to let them in, accusing them of desertion and violation of military regulations. Mido, stunned, hurried to the scene. At the gate, Arashi, irritated, argued with the knights, declaring that their rules did not concern him and that their army was of no use. He demanded a meeting with Amelia, but the knights, outraged by his behavior, ordered the soldiers to seize the deserters. The boys thought about it, knowing that if Mido Shuji were here, he would be greeted with honor despite his status. At that moment, Kanzaki Rin appeared, using her control skill to restrain the knights who were trying to attack. She told them to return to their places. Narumi approached and calmed the guards, calling on them to listen to Arashi, since he would not return without a reason. Rin lifted the spell and the knights reluctantly retreated. Arashi, Narumi, and the others moved to the meeting room. Arashi, upon entering, put his feet up on the table, which caused Hashimoto to remark on his bad manners. He snapped and asked if she was going to be his girl even in this world. Hashimoto, not giving in, replied that he shouldn't act like a bandit. They were gathered here to listen to him. Arashi, lowering his legs, called out to Chinami, next to which stood Sina, introduced as the daughter of the head of the cat people of the Beastmen Alliance. Everyone gasped when they learned that Arashi's team had rescued her from the clutches of demons who had infiltrated the lands of Grandance and kidnapped her. Amelia, not understanding why Sina was there, listened to her story. The demons captured her during a hunt and took her to their kingdom. Arashi stated that with Sina's help, they want to negotiate an alliance with Grandance, as they cannot wait 2 years, as Digrest suggests. Amelia admitted that their position was clear, and Digrest was already considering an alliance with the Beastmen. The unexpected desertion of half the hero squad has complicated the situation, but they are ready to make concessions if Arashi returns. Henry added that the candidates were the army's main strength, and their departure undermined the soldiers' morale. They will be punished for desertion, but if the alliance with Grandance succeeds, Digrest will resume the offensive against the demons. Arasi smiled, pleased, and the negotiations moved on to business. Amelia noted that the people were waiting for the Demon King to die, and it was their interest to speed it up. Sina, agreeing to act for the alliance, asked for help in destroying the demons hiding in the lands of the Beastmen. The team agreed. Henry, curious, asked how they knew about Sina's capture. Arashi, casually answering that they had interrogated the demon, said that in a week Digrest would send messengers to Grandance for negotiations. The delegation will include Mido Shuji, Nagasho Reina, Kanzaki Rin, and Narumi, a wise choice given their abilities. Rin with her control, Mido and Narumi with their ability to win people over, and Reina, despite her rudeness, always knows what to say. Henry will lead an escort of 30 people. Arasi said he would remain on the front lines, and negotiations were not for him. Hashimoto will be temporarily taking over as captain, which made her worried since it would be difficult to deal with Arashi. The team wondered what Shinjo Kai would do. He replied that he would also go to Grandance, but separately, in order to act from the shadows.